Alabama is better than Florida State when the Seminoles don't have Jordan Travis. I'm not going to argue with you on that point. But what happened in college football yesterday was very bad for the sport overall because it sets the precedent that in reality, if we're going to be honest, the regular season really doesn't matter that much.
Welcome, everybody, to Poetic Carnage, episode 19. I am your host, DJ Anubis, here with my co-host, Edgar Allan Foe, this time around.
That's right. And Tom Brady, please come back and save my fucking Steelers. Just please.
Please. Even in a wheelchair, just come out, do it.
I'll take back every fucking insult ever. I'll do it.
So we have a lot to talk about.
We got a boogie. We're probably going to fuck around a little bit less on this one because Steelers play 2 hours and change, and I got Meatloaf downstairs, and this man, you can't. You don't need to know what this man does. He does what he does.
So first, we are going to start touching on the college football thing. The playoffs are now set. Some controversy, of course, has been involved with it, and you and I mean, we're on the same page, but then we're not. And we both have arguments for and against. Yeah. I have a couple of videos that do the same thing. The gentleman that you saw at the beginning, I've got a little bit more of his I think each video I have is about 2 minutes or so. So we're going to go ahead and run the first one, which is giving his reasoning as to why this was a bad thing that FSU got excluded, an undefeated team from the ACC. Got leapfrogged by Alabama SEC team. Saban, a pedigree, great coach, great team. They're on a hot run. They just beat Georgia, who had run 29 straight games without losing, to win the conference championship. So there's a lot going in their favor, and there's some things I will touch on about that with Mr. Poet, because he's my main man here with the great knowledge. And but let's check out what more he has to say here about why FSU got screwed.
What's his name for those who don't recognize him?
I don't remember, unfortunately. I think it is listed there. It's like Jake, I think. Okay. Something. He's from the Daily Wire, I think. So
okay.
At least that's what it said on the video. So we'll see. I got to make sure I make those notes in the description when we're done here.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where it really matters.
winning all your games at a Power 5 school when you've played some big-time non-conference teams, like 2 teams from the SEC, really is not that big of a deal. Winning your conference championship in a Power 5 conference, well, it doesn't really mean that much at all. It all depends on how healthy your quarterback is. That's what dictates it. Now, if the goal is just to get the 4 most talented overall teams or the 4 biggest brands into the playoff, then let's not even play a regular season. Why are we wasting our time? Player safety. Let's just combine the recruiting rankings and the NFL draft projections for the preseason and take the 4 top teams the computer spits out. Let's just do that. Saves everybody.
Thoughts?
Yeah, he made 0 good points, and I'm embarrassed for him. So yeah, that was really bad. And I used to coach debate, and that would be a moment where I take the paper, the arguments, I fold them up, and I'd say we're gonna workshop this, and we're gonna do this better. Okay, so he said that winning the conference championship doesn't matter because FSU didn't get in. I hate to tell him this, but Alabama won their conference championship. So that argument goes out the window. He talked about how the regular season doesn't matter. Well, one of the arguments for Alabama isn't just that their quarterback is hurt in FSU. It's they have more wins against ranked opponents. They beat the number 1 team to win their conference championships. Their strength of schedule was 5 in the country. FSU is 55th. Okay. The head-to-head competition prong is out. I'm now going into the committee's task, okay, how they do it. Now, I'm going to quote something here as well, because he said if the goal is to just have the biggest brands or the most talented teams, and talent doesn't mean best. It just means like how many 5 and 4-star recruits you have. Here is from, and you can find this online. You can go to collegefootballplayoff.com and find the criteria. This is listed. It's been there. This is another one that he gets wrong.
Someone did mention that the committee used a pretty wide web of how they determine.
They do, but the web is out there. And I'm not, I'm mad. I'm frustrated with him. There will be, and I quote, there will be no one single metric to assist the selection committee. Rather, the committee will consider a wide variety of data and information. That's like a legal-based factor test for my law nerds. So basically what that means is, so let's say they have 5 factors, okay? So if theoretically you could have 4 for your end, and I could have 1 on mine, but mine could outweigh all 4 and I could win, at least theoretically, okay? The selections committee's task would be select the best teams. So that's what their option is. So they're not trying to do this based off of brands. They're not trying to do this based off of talent. If it was based pure talent, then I believe Texas A&M is at the top recruiting class for the last 2 years. They would have been in. Like what this guy is doing is making some of the lowbrow arguments that don't withstand any scrutiny, and that's not what we do on this show. So he did a very good soundbite, but he literally said nothing of any merit.
Oh, he's got more.
A lot of time. The fact is, results have to matter from the whole season, not just a portion of it. If anybody out there can explain to me how if Florida State is so bad now without Jordan Travis, then how in the hell did the committee end up still ranking them in front of 1-loss Georgia and Ohio State?
Pause it.
If they're good enough to be ranked.
I will happily explain. The committee is wrong. The committee is wrong. Let's go to another prong that they use. Other relevant factors such as unavailability of key players and coaches that may have affected a team's performance during the season or likely will affect its postseason performance. Okay, so what they did is they did not properly apply their criteria to FSU because they did not want to then take FSU and say your quarterbacks are so bad that you now basically fall to the bottom of the top 10, so you don't get a crack at Georgia. That's what they did, because then they at least give FSU a chance to go out there and beat Georgia, who they probably won't. But that's why. And on top of that, they are, and this would be my last thing with him real quick, because I'm not trying to monopolize the discussion.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
But Ohio State And some of those teams that do have better strength of schedule arguments that they can make, they don't have any of the marquee wins that the 4 teams that got in over them do. So they're giving Florida State the benefit of the doubt. It's a weird argument to say, I think that these guys are wrong. I think that these guys are wrong, so I want them to be more wrong, so I'm right. But that's what he's arguing. I don't know who this guy is. I could do his job better. Hire me.
I kind of like some of his thing. He's being a bit of
he's doing it
sarcastic.
for the camera.
It's a bit it's a bit of a sarcastic
He's a
baiting,
handsome man, though. I'll give him that. He is handsome.
So I had 2 questions for you. One of them I'm going to bring up now because I think it's important. Yes, I agree with you. I think Ohio State gives Georgia a better matchup in a bowl game. The second thing is, a few years back, BYU went undefeated. And they complained about not being in the national championship campaign. This is before the playoffs was even a thing.
Boise State had a similar thing like that too.
UCF had it too. BYU whined, bitched, moaned, went into their bowl game and completely got steamrolled by whoever the fuck they played, which totally invalidated any of their bitching and moaning. So they didn't do themselves any justice by saying, oh, we didn't get in, so it was okay to go to get our ass kicked by Hawaii or somebody in our bowl game.
Yeah, it's not a good
so on that theory, if Florida State can't at least look decent against Georgia, they have no claim to bitch. They have to go in and fight like they're playing.
They have to win. I'm not going
to
say they have to go out there and win. Georgia's really good. And we were talking about this off camera. Georgia can credibly argue. FSU has an argument that they got screwed. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they don't. Georgia can argue we're the number 1 team for almost the entire year. And we lost to a team that you put in the playoffs. We have 1 loss. What the hell? They have an argument. Florida State has an argument. Look, when you only have 4 people in 5 Power 5 conferences, I'm citing to my homie Bronco Wave, who's been on the show, you're going to get screwed. And then that doesn't even include any of the at-large teams who might have an argument as well. Look, we talked, what was it, last year about did we want 6 teams, 8 teams, 10 teams, 12? I think we'd said somewhere between 6 would be the minimum, but 8 to 10, at that point, you should be able to more, if you're consistently getting people out who should be in, it's more of a committee issue than a numbers committee. And I think
it's at 12. So now
then
I'm pretty sure you're going to be on the same wavelength. So with 12 teams, let's be real, 8 of them are like your probably biggest possibilities to win a national championship. The rest of them are just like fodder. But at least you're giving those teams a chance to fight.
Your schools make a ton of money. Their players get a high-profile game that will attract scouts. Matchups make fights. And if we're being honest, we have not – college football and the NIL and the transfer portal is so new. Who knows what it looks like, the depth of college football will look like 5 years, 10 years from now. I don't have an issue with it being 12. Because at the end of the day, if I know that my team is the 3 seed and we're playing the 10th seed or whatever, and we're going to get an easy win, I can sit down and enjoy it and just hope that there's no injuries. Player safety.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, if Virginia ever gets up to number 12, if they ever get there and have to play a number 1 seed, I don't care. Like the fact that they have that shot is a nice thing to have.
Yeah, I'm a Kentucky Wildcats college football fan. We've had in the past couple of years some nice movement, but the standard for UK
it's
football
funny you brought that up because
is different than
one
Alabama.
Of the debates about this was Florida State beat Louisville in the conference championship to win it, but Louisville lost to Kentucky, who lost to Bama.
Exactly. And
Alabama. So there's some different things at play there. Strength of schedule comes into play.
Right. And that's actually I want to say this too. So just so I'm clear. Last year, I had animus towards TCU pundits, the people who were caping for them, like at the networks, and their fans were so awful and whiny on Twitter. I went from going, I don't think you deserve it, to like actively rooting that they lose. Aside from the weirdos who are like, we're going to sue the college football committee, which, by the way, you'll lose that lawsuit because they did it off of their criteria. And, you're gonna lose. Outside of
it's a dumb lawsuit anyway.
It's a dumb, exactly. It's a dumb lawsuit anyway. If it's not based off of perceived corruption and antitrust and gambling stuff like that. Aside from that stuff, I'm not mad at the FSU fans who feel really upset, and this is why. The SEC champion has never missed the college playoffs. The SEC, at by and large, this year is actually a little worse than the ACC. The ACC champion, who's been undefeated, no undefeated Power 5 champion has ever missed it. So the first time ever, something was going to happen and both sides were going to get screwed. So I don't have the animus towards FSU that I had at TCU because, quite frankly, FSU has a much stronger historical record. With that being said, the whole deserving argument that I'm sure that you've seen online, like deserving versus best team, that shit doesn't matter. It's just best team. And to put the final nail in the coffin for that loop, I would simply say this. People think, and it's actually, I blame the college football committee for this and ESPN for this, because people think that if you're a Power 5 team and you win, you automatically go in. Winning your conference is a criteria. It is not as part of the criteria. It is not dispositive. Just because you win your conference does not mean you automatically go in.
Well, I think the only way to solve that,
it's bad information is what I'm saying. Smart people think it works that way because they've basically been told that way for years. And it's not
the only way to solve that, I think, if we were to do it that way, like if we weren't doing 12 teams, is to say, okay, we have 5 conferences. Let's knock it down to 4 because this way it's going to be the 4 teams that win that fucking conference.
Yeah.
But of course they can't do that. They got so many teams, so many schools. So they've decided to go and move to 12 teams in the playoffs. So we've got that solved. So the first question of 2 that I have for you.
Absolutely.
Now, one of them is going to be more of just a feely good type of thought because it's not something that's logical or set in stone or even realistic, but it's just something I'm curious about. So they kind of go hand in hand, both questions. So here's the thing. If FSU had gotten in and not Bama, do you think the chance for a national champion was wide open?
No, I don't.
So you still think there's a dominant team between those 4?
Okay. I think I misunderstood your question. So this is how I look at it. Michigan's good enough to win it. Texas is good enough to win it. Alabama's good enough to win it. All 4 teams are good enough to win it as constituted. Okay. I think we might have a Alabama matchup, Texas rematch, and that the ratings will go bonkers. If SFU got in, Michigan kills them. It's an uncompetitive game. It's a bye. It's over at halftime. They're resting their starters. Michigan basically got to cheat again because they didn't play a real game. And then the other 2 teams are like, what in the fuck? And that brings
this is my line of thinking here. This is why I brought it up. I disagree with you.
Okay.
I don't think Michigan destroys FSU. They might still win. I don't think they would destroy them. I think if FSU got in and Bama did not, I think all 4 teams are about equal in terms of who could go and win. Bama changes the whole dynamic because I think Bama rolls. I think they beat everybody that they play and they're going to win. And there's a lot going for it. Saban, pedigree.
He gets 2 weeks.
They're a fucking machine. They're on a roll. They just beat probably the best team in the nation to win the conference. That to me gives them like the scale just tipped in Bama's favor. So I don't think.
You a question in response to that.
Sure.
Does that you want FSU in, right? You think they should have gotten in?
Based on what they're like, I hate the reasoning why they didn't.
Yeah.
If let's say Jordan Davis never gets hurt and Bama still got in, I probably wouldn't complain that much. I really wouldn't. I just don't like the reasoning because I know I'm kind of being weird when I point to Denver Broncos 2015. Our quarterback was not the guy that had been playing the 4 years prior. He's not that kind of caliber. We went on defense.
Arguably the GOAT. Yeah, not him.
And so one of the things that gets brought up a lot when we talk football, no matter if it's professional or college, is yes, the quarterback is one of the most important positions on the team. However, it's not the only one. I was thinking about it today. John Elway went to first 3 Super Bowls carrying those teams. And when we got there, we got our ass kicked.
Because it wasn't. Yeah, no, absolutely.
It wasn't until we got these other players and the defenses and everything else
the block
that it finally came, we won. So you have to look at it from a team perspective. Now, I don't know how good FSU's backups are. I don't.
They're horrible.
I didn't really watch them, but I don't want to exclude them either, because if your defense is good enough and you find a good game plan, the game plan of somebody like Michigan, let's face it, man, TCU should not have beaten Michigan, but they did. And that's the thing. Like, you go in these games, anybody can win them. It's like they always say it's 0-0 once you hit the playoffs. Anybody can win.
It is. And so a couple of things. So I think that's really fair analysis, because you basically just laid out an argument for Alabama to get in because they could beat anybody, that they're really good. They have Saban the 2 weeks, all of that. But you're also saying, look, historically speaking, FSU gets in every time. And I don't like the criteria. So I appreciate you acknowledging the criteria that is there. And a lot of people right now are just ignoring that this shit is out there, that's been announced, that we know it. So you're addressing it. And it sounds, and just so we clean this up, just logically, by their own rules, these are all factors. So you could, by your own logic, say, if you're going for FSU, fine, it's a factor. But I think those other factors are stronger, because that's how that works. That's how I can tell you from my time as in law school and every little bit as an attorney. That is how those factor-based tests, these rules are literally written like they are legal tests and whatnot, the same way that the NFL rule book is written as a law, because you have clean interpretation, yada, 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 all that boring nerd stuff. Okay, so I appreciate everything that you said. This is what I will say, and this is kind of what pushed me over the edge for Alabama, other than the fact that I like Nick Saban. Okay.
No, you love Nick
Saban. He's lost me a little bit. The whole last year, real quick, in the offseason, he's like, oh, we need our boosters to give more money, otherwise Texas A&M would get all of our players. I was like, Nick, shut the fuck up. Like, go win some fucking football games. They're going to show up. I'm so sorry that you can't have 5 blue 5-star offensive linemen on the bench to start when they're juniors. Boo-hoo. Fuck off. Like that.
Do a little bit of work, Saban. Come on.
Yeah, exactly, bro. Like he lost me a little bit. I was like, Nick, that's not sounding very Saban of you. But I do want to talk about how bad their quarterbacks are, because people brought up Ohio State when they won with Cardale Jones, or McElroy when LSU or when Bama won. Okay, so we're going to be fair here. You said, look how good their team is. Well, FSU is a really good team. We're not going to sit here and act like they don't. Ohio State and Alabama probably had a better team, but that's Ohio State, that's Alabama. And the criteria is, are you the 4 best team, not the obvious choice to win the national championship. So let's not flip it there. Okay, so get all that preamble out. Take the next step forward. I don't see a McElroy who's a good game manager. I don't see a Cardale Jones who is I believe a highly recruited, uber talented guy. I see a gentleman by the name. Oh God, I have it in here somewhere. But that's kind of my point. When they beat Louisville, they had a guy who threw for like less than 100 yards. The Roadmaker and Allen Gregg, or Greg Allen. Here we go. Okay, Brock Glenn, Tate Roadmaker are their backups. Okay. And let's look at them in comparison to the guy that they lost. The guy that they lost, 38.3 points per game, almost 450 yards per game, 274 yards passing per game. Okay, versus 20 points, 221 yards a game, 94.5 passing yards a game. That's with all of those backups. It's not that they're not as good as their Heisman candidate. It's that they're almost unplayable. It's that when you take them in against real teams, they're going to probably get smoked. Now, it's just probably. I don't know. There is that quarterback for Washington who went off in the Super Bowl and went ham. Okay, you can rise to the achievement, and maybe the wide receivers go crazy, and he just has to hit open fly routes all game. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know. But so much of these of college sports is based off of projection. The more you project, the harsher it is when you come up on the wrong end of it. With 12 teams, it feels a little safer to project because, let's be honest, if I put you at the 6th seed and you have to play the 5th seed and you should have been the 4th seed, You got hosed, but you did not get hosed so much that it should all be over and boo-hoo, ha-ha, why, crying. Okay. And that's what hurt FSU in tandem with their really bad strength of schedule. And they've been trying to get out of the ACC for 2 years. Their backup quarterback sucked. Now, this is the rub for them because we watch sports here. We see guys do this crazy thing. It's called get better. So let's say that their quarterback gets hurt in week 6 and they're barely winning games. Maybe by the end of the year, one of those two backups is really, really good. But it happened here, and that's where we have to judge it. And it sucks. It sucks so much that FSU.
Do you think that Georgia is better than Texas?
I think Texas is a little bit better. I think Texas is a little bit
really
better.
Really?
But I would pick Georgia to beat Texas because I would take Kirby over any coach not named Saban. But if you look at just their roster, yeah, I'll take Texas.
I don't know. I think Texas is a bit overrated.
Now, to your point, let's say we had 6 teams, and now FSU's in.
Well, they wouldn't because they put Ohio State.
But I don't think that they would. But that's the thing. I don't think that they would. I think that they knew if they dropped FSU too low.
I don't know, man. Like, because
Ohio State,
they would find a reason to put Ohio State in. They would.
Why? So Marvin Harrison Jr. can carry a bad team again. I like to admit when I was wrong. I thought Ohio State was the shit. And I watched them play Michigan, and I was like, I was wrong. And that
was the first time ever I was rooting for Ohio State, man. But Michigan, they took away all that.
I know, and I was born in Ohio, but I'm not an Ohio guy. But yeah, it's hard to root for. It's hard to root for a team that's blatantly cheating.
Why isn't because I know they sat Harbaugh down for a few games, but why isn't the punishment harsher? Like, why aren't they not playing for a national title?
So my understanding is he got suspended by his conference. And college football as an institution is still doing their investigation. So his suspension,
self-imposed penalties.
Yeah, well, your conference has the ability to suspend you. So they hit him with 3 games. Some people wanted more. I thought it was okay because he missed the Ohio State game. He missed Michigan's 1,000th win. I presume he didn't get paid. Let's be honest. If they get hit, who is calling me? No. Sorry, it was a number. No, we're not doing that right now. The issue that I have, I think, with Michigan is they could win the championship, then forfeit it a year or 2 later, and then Harbaugh's just going to go coach in the NFL. He's going to Pete Carroll it. So it's and people like Pete Carroll now. When Pete Carroll left USC, he was not a popular man. It was not a popular man.
All right. Well, after we finish this particular video, I do have one other question to ask you, and that's the one that I feel is a little bit more of a just your personal thoughts rather than logic. But we'll finish this video here.
Ahead of those two, then certainly they're still good enough to be ranked ahead of Alabama, right? But see, that would mean the rankings have a sense of order, but they don't. Let's not beat around the bush anymore. Boo Corrigan can't explain it well because it goes against where the committee continuously had Florida State ranked even down the stretch. And deep down, they know what they did. You're not going against Greg Sankey and Nick Saban. I'll tell you what happens if Jalen Milroe gets hurt in bowl practice and can't play in the game? Does Georgia get to take Alabama's spot? Right? If we're going to talk about the caveats of injuries, that should happen. There were multiple teams that would have been favored over TCU last year. And don't forget, TCU had 1 less loss than Alabama.
Would you pause
and
that
they
there,
lost
please?
Their conference championship game and got in. And that team...
I love it when somebody argues against themselves. You're not going to go against Sankey and Saban. You mean like they did last year? Well, there's a bunch of teams that would have been favored against TCU, and they got in. Yeah, and then they won a sloppy game against Michigan and had one of the boringest final games ever in the championship. Congratulations. You have just made one of the best arguments I could make to put Alabama in. F
Hold,
minus.
hold that thought, though, when you get to the end. Hold that thought.
Beat Michigan. Everybody talks about the ass beating that took place in the national championship, but forgot that TCU team beat Michigan. In reality, Danny Cannell's right. It's an invitational now. But the main reason I think the committee did it, and they're able to get away with it, is this is the last year of the 14 playoff. Not that there won't be arguments when we get to 12, but none of those arguments will involve an undefeated Power 5 conference champion. I do want to say congrats to Alabama. The players, the coach, they had nothing to do with this. They should take advantage of it. I don't blame them. But I feel awful for the Florida State players and coaches who basically played a whole season for absolutely no reason at all.
That's not true. That's not true. Okay, so I want to congratulate, it's nothing personal. I want to congratulate Saban. That's after he immediately threw Saban under the bus saying you don't go against Saban. He's just said that Florida State did play the whole season for no reason. Well, they get to play against Georgia in a bowl game, so that's interesting. Oh, no, here's another one for you. So many of the arguments that I made were actually based on the regular season. And I'm being a hypocrite myself because I'm saying he's outrage farming, and I'm yelling about him outrage farming, so I should probably slap myself. But the difference is that I'm not on a syndicated show done professionally. I'm just a fat guy with a wonderful beard.
I look at it as just people are venting, in their own way. So that it's kind of how it is. Like, I think if we were to have that guy on this show, which would never happen, but if we did, he would kind of see your logic. He would understand what you're saying. Like, I don't think he's stupid.
No, he's not stupid. He knows.
But I think he's just as frustrated as other people are that this played out the way that it did. Like, it's just really weird because he did have a point about how when did Jordan Davis go down? Like 2 or 3 games ago?
Yeah.
So for whatever reason, the committee still continued to put Florida State in the top 4.
Yeah, but part of
so
that
then when it came time to choose, it was like, oh, well, no, we can't have you guys going in. Like,
the committee has a solid response, though. Now, I don't think that they did it for this reason, but if I was their lawyer, I know what that they would say. Well, he goes down. We haven't seen their backups play. So we leave them there because we need to see their backups play. And we have some season left. And then their first backup gets a concussion. We haven't seen their second backup play. And so we don't want to punish them until we get more information. And then they barely win against a bad Louisville team. So as we have collected and gathered information and we have to make our final decision, we now have a strong basis of which to say they are not one of the 4 best teams. Now, you could intellectually and honestly arrive there, which I have. Now, I'm biased for myself, but I have. But you could also go, ooh, that's a great cover story for I want that sweet Alabama Michigan money. But at the end of the day, it still works. Here's the thing, and I will say this too. If FSU was in the same situation that Alabama was in, they and all of their fans would be making the exact same arguments because you have to advocate for yourself.
Well, they would, but he did mention that, look, if the quarterback for Alabama got hurt in about a week and couldn't play, they wouldn't replace Bama with Georgia.
Well, you can't because you have to make travel arrangements, you have to make contracts, you legally could not do so. But if we're talking about amorphously, if you had all the ability to do so, no, they wouldn't. They absolutely wouldn't. I'm not going to sit here and be some type of shill for them. They absolutely wouldn't fucking do it. But then they could argue we have real backups and a better overall team to support our backup, which FSU doesn't. Like, that's the bitch of it, is for every argument you make, I have a rebuttal. For every argument I make, you have a rebuttal.
All right. Well, to be fair to your side of things, like, I still want to get into my question, but I'll wait till after this video.
Shoot your question, brother.
Okay. The question is, and this is just hypotheticals. Okay. So let's think to last year, TCU, the team that you love. Go out. They beat Michigan, shocked the world. A few years before that, in the bowl games, Boise State beat Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Big thing. Gabe kind of put Boise State on the map.
That it did.
Now, you and I both know we follow college football a lot. We know that Saban and company have been in the national championship game like many times over the last few years, along with Clemson and etc. Georgia. We know that next year Bama will still be in the mix, right? I think we're in agreement.
Unless crazy injuries, transfer portal, but we're
but they're going to be there. They're a good enough school and coach. I mean, unless Saban leaves, I don't see it happening.
Yeah.
Is it wrong? Excuse me, cat's just all over the place.
Yeah.
Is it wrong to actually have 1 year where even if you're FSU and your quarterback's not there, to throw them in there? Because you figure
I see.
next year, the year after, Bama's always going to be up there. They're always going to have a chance, and they usually do. Is it wrong to come from an angle of like, you know what? Let's just throw Florida State a bone and put them in there.
Yeah, it is. Because
it is wrong to do that.
It would be wrong to throw anybody a bone. As long as the team that you're putting in has a legitimate, whether people like it or not, and that's different, argument for it based off of criteria that's out there that you're not changing, it would be wrong. Because then imagine, let's say it's not FSU, and that's a good school. Bobby Bowden, like they have champion. Like you cannot tell the history of college football without spending a considerable amount of time on FSU. So you would be spitting in the face of that program. Let's say it's one of those little. I'm not I go for the little guy type of dude, right? Let's say it was Liberty. I'll use Liberty because they're undefeated. Okay, let's say it's Liberty, and they go, you know what? If we're gonna throw it to a little guy, let's throw it to Liberty. And Liberty goes, like, yay, we're going to play in the playoffs. It doesn't mean anything because everyone knows how you got there. It doesn't mean anything. And if they went out there and got smashed, I think it'd be fair to say that Liberty would probably, get raffle stomped. We'd be like, yeah, that was a waste of time. I don't want anyone to be thrown a bone. And I would be mad if I thought Alabama got thrown a bone. But last year I thought TCU got thrown a bone. Because they won all these games. Yeah, they won all these games barely with some crazy luck. Well,
they beat Michigan.
They did.
But they beat Michigan.
But they beat Michigan off of luck, crazy.
You can't talk about luck though. Luck has no place.
Hold on, I put a comma in that sentence. So they get this crazy fluky, they'll never do it again win against Michigan, a team that destroyed Ohio State, and Ohio State almost beat them being Georgia, and they played against Georgia, and it was over in the first 10 minutes. Once we saw that their starters could not block the third and second stringers from Georgia, we knew it was over. Now, in their defense, that Georgia team is being talked about as the greatest team of all time. It's also
because no one, I don't care if it was Michigan or anybody, they were going to get stomped.
Except Ohio State, because they had the wide receiver matchup. Their one weakness was they only had the 10th best corner in the nation, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is the man. That's
I
how
think
Ohio
you said
State
Junior went down in that game or something.
Yeah, so it was. Remember, he came he got hit almost out of bounds at the end of the end zone, and he fell.
But but the thing is, it's to your point. Georgia was just a monster. Nobody was going to beat them.
They were historically great.
Yeah,
they were the only team.
But I think my point is like I like, even though they got like TCU got their asses kicked, like I still like the fact that they had a chance. I like that. It's a boring game, but it's only boring if you're TCU or somebody else. Like the Georgia fans ate it up.
They lost a lot of viewers, is what I read at halftime. But yeah, well, here's the thing too: you don't want to punish Georgia for being like. That Georgia team could beat the Reggie Bush USC team, that Vince Young team, the Cam Newton team, the Tim Tebow team, the Joe Burrow, where you had to deal with Joe Burrow and then Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, right? Like at least pound for pound. Now I would still take the LSU team because they have two wide receivers that have it like that, and that's sort of what they struggled with on Georgia. But that Georgia team is quite clearly, in my lifespan, a top 3 team of all time. If you want to go back to the 40s in college football and make some historical arguments, I have no issue with that because it's the tapestry is the tapestry. I just don't like the notion of throwing somebody a bone, especially if it came at Alabama's expense. I can credibly say they got screwed last year. And if they got screwed again this year, I'd be like, okay, guess what's going to happen now? All that's going to happen is now they're going to start stealing some signs or pulling a Harbaugh
since we talk about like teams getting blown out, let's say Bama goes in and just wipes the floor with Michigan and Texas or whoever they face. Like, so I think that's going to happen. Huh?
If Alabama wins the national championship, this will be the second time people whined and cried. I'm not saying that's you. You remember it was like 7-8 years ago. they had one loss and people were saying, oh, they shouldn't get in. And then they got in and they won the national championship. This would be the second time, if that happens, that they win the Natty when people said that they shouldn't be there. And what my issue is, it doesn't apply to you because you're a fucking man. You're a real person. You're a fucking adult. It's not just being a man. You're a fucking real person. You're not going to sit there and act like you didn't say, oh, FSU should have been in or whatnot. But then all these people who are screaming about FSU got screwed and we need lawsuits and Alabama has no argument. And that's what I take issue with. If you want to say FSU over Bama, I got you. If you want to say that Alabama doesn't have a credible argument, you're being silly. But
they do, people, and that's why I can appreciate them expanding the playoffs because let's face it, even if FSU got in, Georgia, Ohio State, and Florida State, they're all worthy of being there. Yeah. At least in the mix. Like, even if you think that with Florida State's quarterback going down, they deserve to be in the mix. Doesn't matter.
They do. And I will tell you this. If we had the 12th one, I wouldn't want FSU to be any lower than 5 or 6.
No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't.
Well, that's one reason why I got. Yeah. I think, but here's the other thing, too. And I do want to talk about this because I like to be a realist. I'm just going to make the argument real quick. The argument that you could make for FSU being out that's really mean and really shitty, but also really true, is called watchability. They have they got their second stringer back, which helps them because their third stringer wasn't it. But it's going to be a horrible game to watch. It's bad, most likely, I should say. Okay. We talk about how all the time, like we don't want like even our rival teams' quarterbacks to get hurt. We don't want anyone to get hurt, but especially them because the football sucks when you have to watch bad quarterback play. I would know this as a Steeler fan. You've seen some better quarterback play recently. You too have struggled, my brother, with watchable offenses. You too have seen some real stinkers. Unfortunately, I'm probably going to see another one tonight with Mitch Trubisky going against the vaunted Bailey Zappi. Now that I said that, Zappi's throwing for 500 yards to get shit on me. But it's a horrible game for them to be in as much as you could guess. It would be unwatchable to watch them play. You would watch them get absolutely destroyed. And you would watch FSU basically give, if you had to bet it, a bye to a team in a format that's not supposed to have a bye. And that's the problem that I have. And
the only saving grace is, and we talked about earlier, is that Florida State, if they want to make a claim at all, you say they got to win against Georgia. I just say they got to compete with Georgia. That means even if you lose like under 7 points. If you get steamrolled,
oh Jesus,
you got no room to talk about anything. Like you can't sit there and whine about something that you have no control over. But if that coach does not have them ready to play Georgia because Georgia is the standard, they're probably the best team in the college football right now that didn't make it. Mm-hmm. And if you can't at least compete on that level, then just shut the fuck up and sit the fuck down.
Right. And that's one of the reasons I feel bad for some of those players is all these people are talking on their behalf. And Georgia has so much bulletin board. And Georgia has a right to be mad too. Because they're like, we lost to a playoff team. We won 29 straight games. We're in the SEC. You know what Georgia?
Which is why I brought up the Texas thing. He's like, I think Georgia's better than Texas.
Oh, I think that because if you factor in, I like Georgia's roster a little bit less. Overall, I will take them because coaching matters. But I think for me, where my frustration is for Texas is, you know, everyone makes arguments for Texas, and they deserve to be there and whatnot. But if you say Georgia, people get all mad because it's SEC stuff. People are tired of it. If people say, well, the SEC is weak this year, I believe Georgia beat 3 or 4 ranked teams. Georgia had a top 30, I believe, strength of schedule. Maybe they were 33rd. They didn't play cupcakes. They had Florida State, their combined record actually the teams that they play. Okay, so FSU's opponents were combined 77-79. Alabama was 98-61. If my recollection is correct, Georgia played teams overall with a winning record. So you still have to you can't throw out the fact they played in the SEC, which is weaker this year, which is weird. But if you look at who was actually played when you limit it to that, FSU has a weaker argument, and that's why they're trying to leave the ACC. Because what people have figured out is if you're in the SEC, you get money, you get ratings, and when you're good and you can overcome those hurdles, especially in a 12-team thing, it's more profitable than being on the outside and trying to pull a Washington. There's one
I
team
know the ACC is adding a bunch of teams, and there's some quality opponents coming in, so it's going to make things very interesting in that conference. But here's a video where you will be very happy because they agree with a lot of what you're saying.
Bama 4, what did you think? Initially.
I thought it made great sense. I thought the committee got it right at that point. As soon as I saw that Alabama was in the top 4, I thought that they got it right. They made the hard, right decision in this scenario. It's the best 4 teams. It's not like most deserving and best are somehow mutually exclusive. The teams that deserve to be in the top 4 are the 4 best teams and no one else. And to me, I think in that instance, I thought they've got a chance to get it right, and they did as soon as I saw Bama at 4.
Hey, let's talk about why they got it right, though. I think they got it right because the committee is given the latitude, if 2 teams are considered to be equal, to look and see if the team is the same as what it was throughout the season. When you lose your quarterback, when you lose Jordan Travis, one of the best players, the best player in the ACC, it makes you a completely different team. But there was another issue that ended up getting the Florida State Seminoles. It was the weakness of the ACC. You go back, a ranked win at the time against the Clemson Tigers, a 4-loss team at the end of the day. A ranked team at the time, Duke Blue Devils, a 5-loss team at the end of the day. Louisville, and I think this is where Alabama needs to make sure that they write a handwritten note to the Kentucky Wildcats. The win that the Kentucky Wildcats had over Louisville completely took a lot of the punch away from what that ACC title game was. Scoring 38 points against that Louisville defense and Florida State scored 16 was an illustration of why they're not the same without Jordan Travis.
And you go back and look throughout the season after they lost to Texas, the top 3 wins versus top 15 teams, Ole Miss, Tennessee, LSU, ultimately dethroning the 2-time national champs. They got it right.
All right. So their mission, 4 best teams. I'll ask you, a Georgia Bulldog.
Yeah.
Is Georgia not one of the 4 best teams in the country then if we're going to go there?
Yeah, they absolutely are. But we also knew this. Hey, I know this. Georgia's also a better football team right now than Florida State. I don't even know why they're not sitting at 5. What's interesting in this entire ranking is that, so you want to get it right in the top 4. FSU somehow doesn't make it in there. Why? Because of the eye test? Because it sure can't be resume. But then if that's the case, then you're telling me...
Well, it could be resume and strength of schedule and so on and what he's saying about the strength of the ACC or lack of it.
Well, when you're looking at FSU...
But you are 13-0.
But strength of record, right? Okay, well, so point to one of their other 50 metrics because there is nothing that's indicated that says, well, you got to use these 2 more than these other 4 or whatever.
They don't.
But I would say this. If you're going to choose the top 4, yeah, it should be Georgia. But we also know that there's some other designs that have to be met within this. Georgia's one of the 4 best teams in the country. I think you'd be hard-pressed. What would be fun is, why don't you poll the other teams? Poll the other candidates that could have made it into this playoff.
Yeah.
See who they wanted to play.
Go through and look at that video of Michigan finding out that Alabama got that 4th slot over Florida State. I think everybody.
They were happy to see that.
They wanted no part of having that draw.
No.
They're sitting there. Now, I don't have anything against Michigan. I don't like cheaters, okay? And we'll find out just how extensive the cheating scandal was because I do think that Michigan might be at risk of losing their title if they go on to win it. Okay, but we don't know that yet. It's okay to speculate, but we don't know that yet. This is the part where when you make decisions about who's in and who's out, you kind of, no matter what, come off as an asshole. But they're not wrong about Georgia. And they're not wrong about Alabama because if you look at how Alabama lost to Texas, their offense was horrible. And if you look at Alabama right now, their offense is really, really strong. And damn, doesn't that look like another NFL quarterback that they have under center? I'm not saying he's going to be, but I'm saying like right now when you watch him play, it's like I've seen some of this stuff before. And once you get that Saban coaching and that quarterback, it's not that it can't be beat. Clemson's done it. And, obviously Georgia's done it. Those are the 2 teams that's done it. Here's the problem. Michigan does not want Alabama. They know Alabama has a better coach. They know that talent is probably a wash. Maybe one team edges the other. Maybe one team has better depth. You could argue that. But Michigan is coming off of a year where they choked horribly against TCU. had a sloppy game. Everybody hates them because of the cheating scandal, right, wrong, or indifferent. And on top of that, Alabama's the hotter team, and Nick Saban with 2 weeks of preparation is brutal. And it's also not like Michigan's running a super complicated, nuanced offense over there. We know what they like to do. They like to play like it's the 70s. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's what they want to do. So here's the problem for the people saying Alabama shouldn't be in. You can literally logically argue that they're going to win the national championship. And if you can do that, then you are deserving. And if you have to be like, well, no, because I have these metrics, except I don't have these metrics because I don't actually know what the metrics are. But we always put this Power Conference 5 team in. And even though that we would have to kick out another Power Conference winning team, this team, even though they played way worse teams, they don't have a loss. So that one loss, and then that team that has a loss over there, their loss is against a really good team as well. That was like 3 months ago. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, shut the fuck up. Sometimes for the people who are whining for FSU, I want it to not be FSU. I want it to be STFU. Shut the fuck up. That's the problem. And the guy that we showed, I get it. He's frustrated. He's venting. He probably wants to have something spicy for clickbait. ESPN has a huge and notorious big brand bias because they're in the ratings business. Let's not say that they're not. Let's not say it's anything other than that. I just want us to hit a point where it's okay to admit that someone was going to get fucked. And it was probably better for the guy with the beer in his hand watching the game that he's watching two complete teams now as opposed to FSU, who would probably get killed. And if FSU...
That's actually the best comment you've made. You said two complete teams, and that's really the best thing because if I'm a team like Michigan, and I know they're not excited about playing Bama because I wouldn't be excited about playing
They showed
Bama.
us like that was real. From my understanding, that was during the announcement. It wasn't. Yeah. It wasn't some what was said on the board. You know what was.
In some ways, if I'm a Michigan player, I wouldn't in good faith sit there and say to myself, well, we got Florida State and we should win, but man, it's really not the Florida State that we should be playing. So that's the reality. Like, we always say it in the NFL, like when we have injured players or whatever, like when they go into playoffs and we're like, fuck, man, Josh Allen's not healthy. You know, like they're going against Kansas City. Yeah, I don't know. It's not, you know, Chiefs are going to win that easily. Like, it's like you want to play the best team that you can field.
You do.
And that's really the bragging rights. Because let's face it, if Michigan played Florida State and won, a lot of people are going to say, well, dude, you had easy. You had like a fucking half-ass Florida State team, you know?
Especially if their offense did nothing.
Right. And so, like, you know, some people might say that with Georgia and TCU, but it's like TCU at least beat Michigan. At least they had something behind it coming in.
And they could argue. I always gave them credit. I didn't like some of their wins, and I thought it was unsustainable. But they were wins. Yeah. Now, it just so happened, for me, luckily that year, the Minnesota was doing the exact same thing, and I was like, "Watch what happens in Minnesota." And you know, it set up for me perfectly. The Vikings, I should say, for the listeners. I do want to say this as well too, for the FSU players. They have every right to feel mad. They have every right to be upset. The coaches have every right to be upset. Their fans have every right to be upset. They have an argument, I do want to go over the argument a little bit. Okay. Their strength of schedule was bad, but Bama has gotten away with having a week out of conference schedule. People talk about that all the time. Okay. And they played Duke when Duke was ranked. They played Clemson when Clemson ranked. They didn't make those teams go out there and suck weeks later. Like, they were on the schedule. So one of the issues that I have with like the strength of schedule stuff is it's like you can only schedule so many really awesome teams before you go, okay, so we played 3 straight awesome teams, and we have an injury. At a certain point, it's like why you can go above and beyond too far, and then you're doing yourself a disservice because you can't be like.
And well, people. This is why I've always brought up not ranking teams until about midway through the season. And I know that people say, "Well, you got to have something to start with," but I'm like, "Do you really?" Because let's face it, I made this point a few weeks back when Virginia went into North Carolina and beat the Seminoles, or not the Seminoles, the Carolina Tar Heels. And everybody's talking about Drake May and how good he is, yada, yada, yada. But Virginia was not a very good team this year.
Yeah.
But we went in and won that game. And I was like, Drake May had multiple opportunities to win that game and couldn't get it done. But here's the point, and it comes back to what you're saying and what these guys were saying about the strength of schedule in the ACC. It's not very good. No. NC State was probably one of the better teams that nobody was really looking at, and that had a former Virginia quarterback in that team. But the point is that now we've got more teams coming in. Hopefully that gives us more competition and better teams. I think like Stanford or somebody's coming in. But
you're right, because and this is one of the things too. To your point, I'm talking about, like, I'm a Kentucky Wildcats fan, so if I get to the 12th and then I get to go in the playoffs, I'm stoked. It's weird, like obviously in the NFL, if you're the 12th best team, you're a little bit above average, right? If you're the 20th best team in the NFL, you kind of suck. If you're the 20th best team in college football, your program's probably not great and you're happy to be there, but you're not even close to a championship contender. It would be cool if, with the way college football is going, I'm not expecting the 12th seed to ever win a championship, but if you could squint at them and go, okay, so they're pretty good, and that's a good matchup over there, so maybe they can do it, and there's at least a little bit more parity. And with FSU, but that's my point. I'm not going to punish them for not necessarily having the best strength of schedule. I'm just not going to then turn around and then punish other teams, because let's be honest, if the SEC was as good this year as they normally are, there'd be almost no argument for FSU, even with that one loss withstanding. Because if the SEC was 10 games above 500 and 10 games above, or like 20 games above 500, and that was 10 games above more than almost every other conference or whatever it is, then it's like, well, yeah, the fact that they only have one loss and one at all there is amazing. So it's just, college sports is imperfect because it forces you to take a dubious and obtuse method of analysis, which is then rebutted by other dubious and obtuse methods of analysis. And it's great when last year it's like, yeah, Georgia's the number one team. Who are the other three? So you don't have to, and then it's like, oh, well, you know what? That Michigan team's pretty good until they shit the bed. Like, it's great when you have like the three stratified teams. Imagine, just for sake of argument, that Alabama had beaten Texas. Then we'd be saying they're the number one team by far and away. And then Texas would be like, well, we're the second best team. And then Georgia would be like, well, no, we lost to them it changes everything. But that's based off of one win, like week 2 or 3 in the season, which is why I don't typically care about one loss versus no losses when strength of schedule in the conferences. Like you end up, the more you talk about it, the more you contradict yourself and anyone. And that's sort of what.
Well, the thing is, like, and I know you're a lot like me, you try to have a balanced and objective mind about things. So it's like, you don't want to shit on a team, but then at the same time, you got to just talk realistically. Like,
and you have to pick.
Yeah.
You got to pick them.
All right. So let's just do this for fun. Let's pick.
I have one last question. Just
sure.
So, give me your teams. If it was up to you, who would your 4 playoff teams be, and what would their seed be?
Oh, wow. I haven't seen much of Washington, so I can't really say how good or bad they are, but they are undefeated. Don't know the strength of schedule.
They're pretty fucking sick.
They're pretty
check
legit.
A lot of boxes. Yeah, they're pretty fucking sick.
You think Texas is pretty good. I think Georgia's better. I think that's really the only change I would make. I can't like the way Michigan dominated Ohio State. I can't really kick them out, even because they didn't even have Harbaugh coaching that game either. So, I'm not going to argue with this. Dude, Bama. Any team right now in the playoffs, I would not want to play Bama. I just would not want to do it, and I wouldn't want to play Georgia. If you put Georgia against Washington, dude, Washington probably shit themselves. Like, you just do not want to play these teams.
I mean, it comes now. You're talking about things like intangibles, experience, the national stage, the 2 weeks. So let me ask you, how did you feel that FSU got screwed initially?
I do, but but it's also a part of me, and this is like, you made a good argument against it, that I'm one of those people, like, I like to look for the underdog. I like to look for, and this is why I feel the way I do, because I know that Bama and Georgia is always going to be in a mix because they're in the SEC. It's a very powerful conference, a lot of great teams.
The name brand recognition alone.
Right. Just like Ohio State and Michigan is always going to be in a mix. Unless Harbaugh leaves, that might change things. I don't know. But the reality is, when's the next time Florida State's going to be here? Like, it's really one of those things. Like, I don't know if they're going to be as good next year. Like, it's really hard to say, especially when you're adding these other teams in. So, do I think they got snubbed this particular year? Yes. And I think it's unfair because of the whole like quarterback situation, but I understand it. I do. And I can't argue against it because I think that Bama changes the whole dynamic of these playoffs. Whole dynamic.
So for you, is it really more of a thing where you're like, I would put Bama at where Texas is ranked and take Texas out and put FSU in? Because Texas won.
Well, no, because see, here's the other side of the argument is that do I feel that Florida State's still better than Georgia? No.
Yeah.
and that's the thing. Like, I think this is why it's important for Florida State to have a good showing, because if they don't, everything I'm saying right now is out the window, because I'm trying to go to bat for you. Yeah. I'm trying to go to bat for you, but if you go in, you get curb stomped like TCO, shut the fuck up. I can't do anything for you. So I can't do anything for you.
I think it's just, and for the record, because like I said this too, I think that if there's no quarterback injury and whatnot, I would still say Alabama is better. But if Alabama,
I would agree, because I don't know exactly how good Florida State really is.
Well, the quarterback's amazing. The defense is great. But even I don't like to I like to make arguments on the extreme to force people to look at the entire picture and then dial it back a little bit with context. Yeah. That's an effective way. But what I would say is, let's say in a different world, Florida guy doesn't get hurt, look pretty good. Then I would just say, you know what, Alabama, it's the same thing I'm saying to FSU right now. Almost every year somebody gets fucked, and unfortunately it's you. Now, I would also be arguing, like, until I was blue in the face, that Alabama should have gotten in over Texas, but that was the hot argument. And then people were kind of hoping that Louisville would just be FSU, so we wouldn't have this, or Georgia would be Alabama, so we wouldn't have this, or Texas would lose, and then we wouldn't have this. But this is kind of the scenario that we got in. So,
as Mo would say, chaos.
Yeah, and Mo, he and I had a spirited debate over on Discord. You pop in, scroll up a little bit, and read it. Shout out to Mo. Mo is the best of us, by the way. Shout out to the homie Mo. Shout out to the GOAT.
Schmo.
I talked to him about getting him on the show. He was open to it, but this is months ago. But he would have to talk to his news for where he works, because it's part of the media. They'd have to clear it. So, but shout out anyway. We don't.
Well, if he's just giving opinions on sports, I don't think it'd be a problem. But then again, I don't know much about it.
It would be for that, because if he's talking about sports, he's representing them no matter what. So. Regardless, shout out to the homie Mo. Shout out to all the listeners. I feel like we've covered a lot of this. We put a little bit over an hour into it.
I just wanted to touch on the last. Like, just give me your pick. Who's winning it? Who's winning each game, and who's going to win it all?
I'm taking Alabama over Michigan in a classic. I'm taking Texas over Washington. I'm taking Texas probably by 10 points. I think Texas is incredible.
Really?
I think Texas.
I'm gonna be keeping an eye on that.
I think Texas is incredible, and I'm willing to be wrong. I think we're gonna get a rematch of Texas versus Alabama, and I'm thinking that if and when Alabama, first off, Alabama makes a championship game, then nobody can complain about them getting it. Unless you're gonna make the awkward thing that they should have gotten in based off of merit, but FSU got screwed, so the championship caliber team shouldn't have been in, which is a weird argument. You can make it. But I'm going to pick Alabama to beat Texas in a classic. It's going to be the Battle of the South. And then I am going to be really mean to the obnoxious anti-Alabama. And I'm not even an Alabama fan. Go Wildcats. But I'm just saying, there are some people who need trolling over this to a degree. We don't dox people. We're not bullies. We're not trying to make people unalive themselves. Just some good old-fashioned styling on. That's my pick.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's Bama going to be Bama and Texas, unless Washington really stuns them. Which
They're
really, I'm kind of
really
pulling for Washington to make a. I know Nomad's a big Washington fan, so or maybe
They're
it's Washington
really
State.
good.
Not
They
sure
could
when he
do
really
it.
likes.
And here's the thing. Washington's good enough to beat Alabama and win the championship too. I do think it. And that's one of the reasons why I was so happy with these Final Four, because to me, outside of Georgia, who I think is probably the least sympathetic out of all the teams we've talked about, which is weird because 29 straight games and all that.
Yeah, but you got to win that conference game, dude. You win it, and you're in.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
it.
Yeah,
that's what it is. And here's the other thing too. And people don't want to admit that bias goes the other way. No one's crying for Georgia. No one's crying for Alabama. The bias goes both ways. So
yeah.
I feel like we did I persuade you at all? Did I persuade you at all?
Sure. Like I have no dog in the fight. I hate FSU, but I kind of sympathize with what's going on there. I do.
It's hard not to feel.
Bama plays Texas, I do think Bama will win. And I don't want Texas to come back like, Bowden did years ago against Spurrier and complained that, we already beat them. We shouldn't have to play them again. No. You got to earn the right to be a national champion. If you play Bama, you got to do it again. Do it again.
Alabama beat Georgia one year and then lost to them in the championship game.
Yeah.
So they've been on the other end of it too. There was, if you remember when Mike Hart was the running back for the Wolverines, it was like 2007 or 8, maybe 6. Ohio State and Michigan were really highly ranked, and they played. And this was during the BCS era, which is even worse than what we have now. BCS era was terrible. And Michigan said, but we lost to them, but they're the national champions, and we should have played them again. And they had like a legitimate case for it. But OSU said, no, we already beat you. But if you play your division rival in the playoffs in the NFL, you have to win that game. See, college sports,
it's crazy.
Actually, you know what? Give me 14 teams just to be safe.
Yeah. Well, once it goes to 12, we shouldn't have to hear about it anymore. Because, like I said, usually if you go to 12, you're going to have about 8 teams that are really your dominant teams. The rest of them are just come on, little fieldlings. We're going to eat you up alive. Come on.
I don't care about the 13th seed or the 14th seed unless it's just like so obviously wrong.
It's not going to happen. I think we're good. I think you and I were talking at one point that 6 to 8 would have been fine. 12 is covering everything. I don't think we're going to have any problems.
We shouldn't.
All right.
If we do, it's going to be outrageous.
Talking about respective NFL teams. Yours plays tonight against the Patriots.
Tom Brady saved
and you just came off a crushing loss to the fucking Cardinals. Can we explain this? Now, one, tell me what you thought of the game. And 2, we're talking about whether or not you still have a shot at the playoffs because you are on the bubble just like Denver is. So how do you feel about it all?
So I believe, so here's the first thing. We had multiple Steelers come out and say we took Arizona too lightly, which tells me that this team, especially on the defense, was not up. They weren't up to snuff. And quite frankly, they have to own that.
Mm-hmm.
And the coaching staff has to own that. Because that's on you. We are the 5th seed. So we are the top wild card seed.
Right.
We could have a full game bubble over where we are right now. And it's especially damning because Cincinnati won. And they might have a little bit of life with them with Jake Browning. Okay? So now
he looked good the other night.
He did. So
now, granted, Trevor went down, so that kind of changed the whole dynamic of the game. But
it did. But the Cincinnati's still a nasty team, whether or not they're playoff viable. But right now, they're playoff viable. That's kind of. I was hoping they just roll over and die, but unfortunately not. So how else did we lose that game? Okay, so we decided we used a very risky defensive strategy where we didn't want to tackle anybody, and we gave up a lot of long third downs, and we had horrible drops on offense. James Conner got his revenge against us.
That's got to be embarrassing.
I did not have a catch money good time. I won't lie to you. I was sad to see us get snuffed on 4th down on the goal line. I was sad to see Pickett go out with an injury. We basically did nothing good. And there's just no other way to put it. I was disappointed with the effort. It's like they showed up and just thought that they were going to win. And Arizona is really bad. They are a horrible team, but they're also a horrible team that snuffed the Cowboys. And Dallas is really good this year. Like we say that every year, but they're actually good this year.
Yeah,
So
there's always that team out there, whether it be Cleveland, Arizona, whatever. They always get like one win that you're just not expecting.
Yeah. Well, these guys, but here's what people forget. Organizations try to tank, coaching staffs try to tank. These guys are playing for their jobs. So they're going to play. Yeah, you might bench me or you might put me in a weird scheme. I'm going to do everything I can to keep that sweet NFL money coming in, and rightfully so. So, like here, I think I remember this play. Let's watch what happens here. So we drop back, we throw it over the middle. We have a beautiful throw that's dropped. Hayward is looking around, trying to figure out how he hasn't been cut instantly. We're kicking a field goal. We missed the field goal. I can't be mad at Boswell. He's been great for us. He's been great for us this year. You're gonna miss a field goal every now and again. Look, man. I mean, it boils down to this. If you made a list of the best players on each team and you compared them, right? James Conner would be, he's a pretty good back. He's a little underrated, but the majority of the top 10 would be Pittsburgh. And I don't want to hear any excuses about like the too long weather delays and any of that shit. We let an inferior team come into our house and beat the shit out of us. And we lollygagged. We didn't take advantage. The offense looked really good early in the game. We didn't convert, which is now becoming an issue. I think we can move the ball a lot better than we did with Canada, but I need to see that shit go in the end zone. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. And
Right.
I do think we will make the playoffs. I think, matter of fact, hold on. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
Steelers. I should have had this out. I do apologize. Steelers.
Do you ever, are you worried at all? Like, kind of like, this is something I'll bring up when I talk about the Broncos, but do you worry at all that you're going to kind of finish 500 and be in that no man's land when it comes to draft picks? Because, like, one thing that I worry about is, like, we're on this run. We did lose to Houston, which I'll talk about, but I worry that we're going to get to this maybe 500 area, and then like we're just gonna miss out on like a QB prospect because we're not high enough. Like it's like one of the things. Like I'd either like
out of prospects to trade up for, right? Because it's like, oh, if I'm at 15, let me trade up to 7. I'll pay it to get that quarterback. Well, you're out a little bit of capital because of the Russ trade. Now from here on out, it's not as bad now. No, absolutely. And a lot of Steelers fans, they want Tomlin to be fired, which is silly. I'm not even talking about that anymore. Okay, it's silly. You have a coach who's great.
Yeah. Do you think he's on the hot seat right now?
No, he's a top. If he retired today, he walks into the Hall of Fame. If they fired him, he gets whatever job. He is such a good coach that he would get any opening that he wanted. And you could probably, if he is available, you'd see some teams probably fire their guy. Okay. What hurts him is he's a defensive coach in the era in offense, during an era of offense. That does diminish his worth a little bit because the rules dictate what you have. But look, in terms of like roster building and construction and all of that. But when you have a great team in franchise and you're not, everyone thinks I'm supposed to win the Super Bowl. Well, only one team gets the year. You have this coach for a long time, and if that's your standard, the Super Bowl, even though you've done it 6 times, how long have the Steelers existed? Okay, so Chuck Noll was a really good coach. He didn't win the Super Bowl every year. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. It doesn't mean he's not great. But you get used to, you start to take for granted a person's strengths. And then you start going, I want to win the Super Bowl. Why aren't I win the Super Bowl? And now you're focusing on the weaknesses. And you see the same weaknesses year after year after year. You start to forget how good someone is. So there's a lot of people in New Orleans who are happy to see Sean Payton go. They could probably use Sean Payton right now with that busted-ass offense. There are a lot of people who are happy to see Walsh go. Not Walsh go. Andy Reid go in Philadelphia. And then there was a lot of people who wanted him gone in Kansas City until we got Patrick Mahomes. And you see the weaknesses. We all know what the weaknesses are for those coaches and so on and so forth. But you know those weaknesses so well because you get bored with their success. And when you get bored for your success, you take them for granted. So as I look at their remaining schedule, since we're talking about success, we have to beat the Patriots tonight because we have to play the Bengals again. They're live. We have to play the Colts and their playoff caliber team. We have to play Seattle, which is tough, and we're on the road. And we have to play Baltimore again. We are capable of winning all of those games. It's unlikely that we win all of those games. The easiest game there, I would say, is probably New England, but they have a really good. The Belichick is kind of wonky these days.
They're scrappy. They're
scrappy, and the Bengals. Division games can go on any way. The Ravens are better than us, and division games can go any way. The freaking Colts, man, are fighting for their life, and they'd be in the playoffs right now. Actually, they're the 7th seed. They are a playoff team right now, and they'd be one up earlier if the refs didn't give the Colts a loss because the Browns, they gave the Browns a win in that one. By the way, I'm going to take this time to say I'm tired of people downplaying the Colts. Let's give them some love. And then Seattle, they're probably going to be playing for their life come into the season. And even if Seattle's bad, playing at Seattle is brutal. That's why that stupid fucking Cardinals loss is so damning, because that was a little bit of cushion that we had. And if we don't win tonight, the season's not over, but we have to win out or get help. And if you're
you're probably gonna need some help because
needing help.
I think you'll win tonight. Where is the game? Is it in Pitt?
Yeah.
So I think you'll win, but I think the rest of your schedule is very tough. Very tough.
We have like the 4th or 5th tough schedule in the league, and here's the deal. So fucking what? It's like you could play a team who's really good, but they have an injury, so they're not nearly as good. Or you could play a team who looked horrible and they're great, or you could beat a team that looked great and they end up being horrible at the end of the year. But like if you look at strength of schedule, winning percentage based off of the teams that we played this year, it's really high up there. I think we're number 1 or 2 actually. I know we were a week or 2 ago. It is what it is, and plus no one's going to cry for the Steelers.
How long does Pittsburgh stay with Pickett going forward?
Oh, that's the next damning thing too. Because if he played really well post-Canada, he would have a strong chance to keep his job. But he's hurt now, and you have questions about him. You think he's better than what his stats show. Stats show that he's really bad. I think we're going to give him another year. And
I'd say probably 1 more year, I think.
And I don't want to do that because here's what I want to do. I want us to look at our draft capital and just say, fuck it, let's go get a guy. We traded up to get Ben Roethlisberger. Now, we didn't trade up a mountain, but let's go get a guy. Like, okay, we're not going to get Caleb Williams unless we're giving away 7 straight picks, in which case you can't win anyway. What does it cost to get Penix? What does it cost to get Drake May? What does it cost to get some of those guys? What does it cost? That's what I want.
I think if I was Pittsburgh, this is what I would do.
Meth.
I would keep Pickett, but then next year I would go out and find out whoever picked up Trey Lance. I would go find him.
Dallas.
Say, look, I want this guy because whatever reason, and then I would use him to push Pickett because Pickett's either going to fold up his tent and cry and want to move on, or he's going to step up his game. But if he does pack up his tent, then Trey, I think you can still kind of salvage him. He just needs a new start.
Yeah, he's never had a chance. He's never.
Yeah.
Now
the problem, of course, with both these guys is they just can't stay on the field, and that's a big issue.
It is, and that's why I felt so bad for Trey Lance because it's like he's getting his chance and he gets hurt, and not only does he get hurt, it's a leg break. Not only is it a leg break, where it broke meant he was out for the year. Like it wasn't his fault. All he did was play football. You can't be mad at him. I was really confused with all the Niners fans. Well, not all of them. Some of the Niners fans were mad at him. Like, God, he didn't mean to.
Shit happens,
He was just playing football. He was playing fairly well. Yeah, he's just playing football.
He actually was starting out to play pretty well. I think he goes 3 games in. He was doing pretty well and then got hurt.
He was improving. And I think the thing to what you're saying is it would be easier to sell me on that if Pickett was a little bit more talented. But I mean, Matt Canada was so bad they chanted for him to be fired at Penguins games. He became a national meme.
Wow.
this is this is what I will say, because I do want to be positive. I do want to be positive. I love my team. I do. I love being a Steelers fan is super dope, and I really enjoy it. I love the history. I love all the things that go about it. So I have a soft spot in my heart for the Broncos. I always will. But John Elway truther. It is possible for that man to fall out of my top 5. But if he does, it's probably because I'm 90 and so many generations of quarterbacks. I'm a John Elway truther. I do. I love Mike Shanahan. I'll always have a spot for him. And it's but the Steelers, that's who I am at this point. It's not changing. And I love Joey Porter Jr. He's playing amazing. Broderick Jones probably should be our starting left tackle. When he went in full time as our starting right tackle, that's when we started running the ball better. We've lost so many inside linebackers, and the guys we put out there week after week after week. We should have gone after Leonard, who was cut by the Colts, but they're battling. TJ Watt, to me, is the best defensive player in football. If Pittsburgh makes the playoffs, I think that in this weird quarterback year, I think TJ Watt should be the MVP. Now, no one will agree with me, and if and we're going to get into that. But as you know, he's not my pick right now. But I don't want to just be negative. I love it. Mike Tomlin's a great coach. I love rooting for Mike Tomlin. We have good things on the roster, but let's just be very honest about this. If you took this Steeler team, which is kind of afloat, we're the 5th seed. We're not horrible, right? But we're not, if we had won, I don't know, 2 other winnable, last week in another winnable game, we're fighting for the 1st seed. If you took us and you threw us in the NFC, I'm a whole lot calmer, because it's like Philly's elite. San Fran's the best team, in my opinion. And Dallas is really good. And Detroit's pretty good. They're not as good as they looked early on, but they're still pretty good.
Right.
After that, who scares you in the NFC? Seriously.
Nobody.
There's no one in the South. The South is horrible. Horrible. You look at the AFC.
Although
West.
you could argue, this is what's funny, because I still need to go back and look at our picks from the beginning of the year.
Oh, God. Green Bay's saving me, man. They're starting to come.
Right. They're starting to come along now. So, it's like, ooh, they're making some noise.
Noise, yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about another team that, is in the same boat you are. We're 6-6, I think. And, we just came out of Houston. I knew this was a loss that I had picked, but the worst thing about this type of game is that when you're in it at the end and you have a chance to win, it hurts a lot more, because we could have won this game, but they really are a good team, the Houston Texans.
And they did that. They lost Tank Dell for the year that game. That sucks. Tank Dell, shout out to him. That guy looks phenomenal. I wish him a speedy recovery. How about Sutton, though? Remember when everyone was telling us that guy, he's dead, he's washed, he can't do it, not good anymore. That, I don't know what that was. That was bad. was that?
Well, this was a game that, look, Neko had a chance to watch it. I didn't really get to watch it live. I was at work, so a lot of this was just me kind of going back and watching the game and replay. But she was describing things that were happening. And I did notice the offensive line was struggling in this game, but you can't really take anything away from the defense. And I'm going to bring up that later on, because we're going to go through our Players of the Year award stuff that we've picked. But the fact that we were still with a chance to win this just bugs me, because it was there. And then I noticed even on the final play, which will come up towards the end, that's a great interception, but it's underthrown. That's one of the problems with that one.
And it shouldn't have been. He has the arm strength to hit that pass.
Right.
That's not a keysome interception.
Right. So there you have a nice one. He led his receiver, Sutton's there, and it's a good pass. Yeah. But that final interception in the end zone, I can tell that he just panicked. And granted, time was running out, but he avoided the sack, which he was doing an entire game anyway. But just he had so many chances. I thought maybe he might try to run it in.
I thought that was the option.
Yeah.
I actually don't mind that interception, because that is so. When I was talking about the gift of him this year and the curse of him is that he's a game manager. He's much better than he was last year.
Yeah.
But when you're a game manager, it puts a limit on your offense. And when you trade for a game manager, it limits your cap It limits who you can draft, who you can trade for. It puts some restrictions on your squad.
Right.
But I want him to go out there and I called him when we did our rankings the game manager plus. He's a game manager, but he's still got a little bit of that old Russ in him. Well, if you're going to be a
Here's
playoff
that
team,
play right there.
that part right there, that's beautiful. Yeah. That throw, I will actually defend that throw. And this is how I will defend it. It's at the end of the game. There's 9 seconds left. He's probably going to get tackled in bounds if he runs. If he, it's going to be rough. And you want to say he should have ran, I don't necessarily blame you.
Well, I think that he could have ran a little bit. Like, it's one of those things where he was already
the McNabbit. Yeah.
Right. Because he could have moved up some more and made the defenders come up on him. And that was the problem. So he probably was worried about time, had the guy on his heels and said, you know what, I just got to try to give Sutton a chance or whoever, I think it was the tight end, to give it a chance to catch it.
Yeah, it was.
And that was the problem. I mean, they just ran out of clock.
The issue that I have on that play, first off, the line failed him. They did. And second off, that tight end, brother, there's 9 seconds left on that clock. You got to know how much it is. So they don't want to call pass interference. They really don't want to call offensive pass interference.
Right.
And you are allowed to go around, get that ball, bat it down, anything, play defense, preferably try to catch it. Like, I understand he's not DeAndre Hopkins. I get that he's not Michael Irving or Terrell Owens or insert any other large wide receiver who's great in the clutch. I know he ain't Anquan Bolden or even Carl Pickens if you want to go way back in a more obscure player. You got to do something. And so Russ is in this weird spot where he's playing pretty well. His stats are coming back down to earth. He's definitely a game manager. The defense is playing well again, so him being a game manager is no longer so punitive, although it is limiting. Whereas when the defense was playing bad and you're like, I need that old Russ right now, and he couldn't do it for you.
Yeah.
It did suck. That's why, and the reality of the situation is, there's just no other way to put it. You aren't in that situation at the end of the game where I'm excusing a tough pick. If you don't throw the other two, the one that he threw that underthrown ball to Sutton, I'm not going to say, it should have been a touchdown, because Sutton's fast, but he's not running like a.
Well, no, you could tell Sutton was kind of starting to fall, but again, if you're leading him, at least only one guy has a chance at it. I mean, it was just a great play by the defender, but definitely underthrown. That first interception was like the nobody.
Bad. Yeah, it was horrible. And you know what? And here's the thing: we kill Josh Allen for stuff like that, and maybe we kill Josh Allen a little bit too much for stuff like that, considering how much of the burden he carries for his team. And he's still statistically excellent. But Josh Allen will come back and make some more. He makes more wow plays than what the fuck plays, and that's why the Bills have been so successful. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs this year or not. They're going to have a new coach come next year. Denver won't. Denver might have a new quarterback. But I
don't know, because that's the conundrum, because I picked us to lose this game regardless of the final games that we had.
Nasty.
The next game that I selected that we would lose would be the Lions. So I figure we're going to win the rest. We have the Chargers, the Raiders, and just some other teams that I think
are division games, so you can't even take them for granted. Like that's
right. But on paper, I'm sitting there saying, the way we're playing, sure,
you should still win. You should,
as long as we're not turning the ball over. But here's the thing: if we get to the playoffs, and you can sit there and say, okay, it's worth it. It's worth it. We can probably keep Russ and try to move forward. The problem is, if we miss the playoffs or finish 500, we are in your boat. We are too far out to get Caleb Williams or anybody. On top of that, we have to decide if we're going to pay Russ that big money before the end of the year. Because
here's something to keep in mind, because I try to be positive. Okay. There are so many talented quarterbacks to see. And remember the Josh Rosen draft class I can never live down. There's a million guys who are supposed to go. Right. Yep. If this one pans out and that one did, in terms of guys taken in the first round, then all of a sudden you might only have to, if it's one guy, you never want to take a quarterback just because you need a quarterback. Yeah, you should like him. Okay. But one of those guys, because people forget sometimes you can have more than one quarterback per draft class who's good. It happens. You know what I mean? You might be in a situation where you have to trade up 5 slots, 6 slots, not 12 where you really have to pay. I will tell you this too. It would be really funny. I wouldn't enjoy it, but it would be really funny if our two teams are trying to leapfrog one another to get a quarterback. Like they're just betting with one another. We'd have a lot of fun with that. So
yeah, that would be you and I'd be talking a lot of shit throughout that draft.
Lovingly.
Which we'll probably be doing a live draft at that point because we had a lot of good time last time.
I got such good feedback from that, by the way. Yeah, we're definitely doing that. However, what we will do is we're going to schedule some breaks so we can stretch our legs and use the bath. Yeah, that was rough.
I'll have to find like some way to advertise something for like 5 minutes while we're at the restroom.
Yeah. Hey, you know what we could do for that actually? We could advertise some of your podcasts and some of my games.
Yeah.
We could do that. We could advertise some of the other homies' podcasts and stuff too. They can pay us $5 for the ad spot and buy us some beer or something.
Yeah, right. We need drinking money for the draft night, folks.
Yeah, brother. Let me tell you something. The last 45 minutes of that, I was delirious. I didn't know where I was. I was drinking whiskey. I was so dehydrated. It
was rough.
I was dying, and I'm like, all
right.
I really am 30.
So we also are going to talk about the MVP and the rest of the award positions that are this year. Now, granted, there's been betting on who's going to get it, but you and I are just going to select who we think are going to win or who we think should win. Really, it's really kind of who we think should win.
I think it should, and it's, by the way, it's based off of now. So if things change,
so things will change.
If the guy that you pick for MVP gets injured or something horrible, right?
It would change.
I'd be like, why aren't you sticking with your pick? Well, he didn't play the last 6 games, you fucking asshole. That's why.
It's FSU, motherfucker. That's why.
TCU, bitch. Like, that's my pick for
everything. All right. Well, we'll start with the most valuable player, and I'll kick it off. It's a name that's brought up. Now, there's a few of them out there, but and I know you're going to have some things to say about this, but I've got some rebuttals. So my pick at this point, and he knew it right off the bat, is Mr. Brock Purdy from the San Francisco 49ers.
Yo, he beat all
and I know he's surrounded by a shit ton of talent, but, we talked about it earlier. Elway needed that talent to finally get a ring, and sometimes you just got to do it.
You're allowed to play
but you and I have agreed that Brock, he's not at a point where I can sit there and say Hall of Famer, but I've seen this kid play. He's calm. He's collected. He knows what he's doing. Doesn't have the strongest arm, but then again, I don't think Brady really did either.
No, he didn't.
So what I do like about Brock is that he's collected. He came in. I don't remember if he was undrafted or just a 7th round draft choice. I can't remember. I think he was undrafted. And
7th round, Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah, basically. And, I was talking about before the draft when he was in there, like, hey, we should take this guy late. I mean, I was a little bit concerned about and I always state he had some interception issues, but he doesn't seem to really show that a lot of that here in the NFL so far. So I like that. And again, it comes down to what you and I would probably agree is great coaching and a great position with the talent around him. So he's on a good team. And it's funny how that works for quarterbacks. So let's swap out Purdy real quick and say Justin Fields. He would have a ball in this team. He would have a great time.
Yeah,
and we would be speaking differently about Justin Fields right now. But the reality is, he's in Chicago. You got guys that often go to like Cleveland, where they go to die, or the Raiders, and it's like we often wonder, like you were a big fan of Rosen. And I was kind of confused when they replaced him with Murray. I was like, well, you just drafted Rosen. What's the problem? So then he goes to Miami, doesn't really pan out.
Rosen had he was kind of a special thing because the physical talent was there, but this is what I was wrong.
Kind of like the Cutler thing.
Actually, there's a lot of comps there. And he did have some bad luck that the Arizona team was so bad that Sam Bradford, one of the most accurate passers of his day, one of the better pure passers if you just go by like quarterback mechanics and stuff. I don't even think he could hit 60 percentage points like as a passer, and that was a pro's pro. And and he was he had a great arm, but he's also kind of a dinker and dunker too. If you can't hit 60 dinking and dunking, something's wrong. But Rosen he bounced around. He had bad attitude. I don't even know if he's still in the league. I have to wear that one. This is what I'll say about Brock. Okay, he's not my pick. He's not. I'm not going to punish him for playing with studs. Okay, Troy Polamalu got to play with a lot of really good players on defense.
Mm-hmm.
He also got to play with Hall of Famers on defense. James Harrison will eventually get in the Hall of Fame. I hope it's this year. And even the guys who weren't Hall of Famers, Ryan Clark's really, really good safety. All that stuff, right? Jack Lambert got to play with the rest of the Steel Curtain, right? Like, let's pick an offensive team. What's a really fun? Okay, let's pick the Brady Buck team that won it all. Gronk is a Hall of Famer. Mike Evans is probably a Hall of Famer. Evans has some crazy stats. Okay, Antonio Brown wasn't what he was, but he was still very good. Chris G was really, really good. They had a wonderful offensive line. They had an elite defense. Now, part of that was they were really good, and that offense put them in favorable positions. But you're allowed to play with really good players, because if people are going to sit there and tell me that Joe Montana is the GOAT, and we don't punish that Niners quarterback for the copious amounts of guys he gets to play with.
Look at Troy Aikman. I mean, surrounded by talent.
He was. Now Troy is a little different. That I would talk that would be 20 minutes. So I'm just going to say he falls into it. There's a distinction I would make. This is what I'll say for Brock. It's different for him because he's young. Montana was at least a second or third round pick. Yada yada yada. We know that Shanahan's a stud. All that stuff. Here's the argument for Brock. Okay, 4-year stuff. The efficiency stats are there, but his average pass in the air is like 9 or 10 yards. It's leading the league by far and away. So he's not just dinking and dunking. They are 11th in yak. This is of at least last week. I don't think those stats have changed that much. So they are a good yak team, but there is this perception that they're like leading in yak, and that's what it is. And that's one of the things that boosted up Case Keenum's stats in Minnesota that drove me insane. I was like, look at all these yak yards and look at how bad his deep ball passing is. Okay, if you look at Purdy, where I will push back a little bit is he does not have the same interception rate or total that he had in college, but he does throw a lot of passes, and they somewhat track this unofficially, that should be picked. So he does lead a little bit of a charmed life. Be that as it may. And stuff happens, but here's the thing. Okay, no one remembers. I'll use Joe Montana again because they're kind of the same guy in a way for so many reasons. Super Bowl against the Bengals, I don't remember which one. I think it was the second one. He has the drive that ended up being the game-winning drive. He chokes, and he throws a pass directly to a Bengals corner, straight to him. Folks, you can look this up. I'm not exaggerating. The guy drops it. If he catches the ball, I believe Cincinnati can run out the clock or damn near, and then they'd have to drive the field. Like, the game is over, okay?
Yeah.
Guy drops it, so it doesn't fucking matter. Okay, Tom Brady in the Super Bowl against the Giants. Helmet catch, David Tyree. It happened. It doesn't matter. Okay, Marshawn Lynch. We'll go the other way to show you, that goal line thing against Brady. It happens the way it happens. Doesn't matter. Now, that might be an indication that quarterback wins in Super Bowls might not be the hottest thing that you should go off of, but that is what people like for the MVP conversation. And so for Brock Purdy, he is challenging the field. He is attacking the field. He is playing on a loaded team, but Patrick Mahomes got to play on a loaded team. I'm not comparing. I'm not saying.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like, Mahomes is clearly a better quarterback.
Yeah. Oh Jesus.
And Brock has an uphill battle to prove himself, because when some of that talent goes away, he's kind of
not going to be there next year. They're going to have to pay him too much, and they're in cap hell already.
Yeah, so eventually Brock's going to have to show that he can be the man. Like, right now he's doing well. He's young. Now, if they go and win a Super Bowl and he becomes MVP, well, then he can make his case.
Then it is what it is. And here, I'll tell you this, because I don't hate the pick at all. This is the other thing that I will say. What really strengthens his pick is I like to watch NFL quarterbacks. especially the ones that sucked, because the only reason they were there is because of this.
Yeah.
Break down the play. And I'm not saying he's Peyton Manning. He's never going to be Peyton Manning intellectually.
No.
But he understands the theory of the offense, and he makes the reads and the progressions. Does he have a much easier time than, I don't know, Kenny Pickett? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Would he survive if he was drafted to the Lions and had to play the same type of football that Matt Stafford did? No. But he's not in that situation. That's kind of why, like, I don't think that he's as good as what his numbers say that he is. But if you remember our ranking, especially this season, because so many guys are hurt and in all kinds of stuff, I viewed him as, if I highball him, because I do spectrums, he's the 8th best quarterback. If I lowball him, he's the 12th to 14th, somewhere in there. I think that he's probably the 9th or 10th best guy, but he's played really well coming off of that stuff. So he's probably a little bit closer to the 8th for this year. Now, if I wanted to beat him up, I'd be like, 3 straight losses, horrible against Cleveland. How could you, the concussion stuff, whether he had it or not versus Minnesota was rough. But it's like, you lost 3 in a row and you were not great. And even against Minnesota, where he had those 2 turnovers at the end, he played okay up until that point, but he wasn't balling. And they lost to a team that they shouldn't be losing to. But here's the deal. Jalen Hurts was my second pick. I'm not going to tell you. You know who it is, but I'm not going to tell people who it was. He just played a stinker. Jalen Hurts can play himself back into it. Patrick Mahomes, you could easily argue it, because his offense is kind of dookie, and he's the only thing keeping them afloat. But we do hold him to a different standard. That's not fair, but we do. But he could have that as well. And so typically it's kind of a runaway thing. Like this time of year last season, we knew it was either going to be Mahomes or it was going to be Hurts, unless something drastic happened. And unfortunately, Hurts got banged up a little bit, and, it was what it was. There's nothing wrong with the Brock Purdy pick. I don't want him to get it because I think it'll hurt him in the long run. Because then when he does stumble, people are going to be like, bullshit MVP, favoritism, all that. It is. I think that he might be running before he's walking, but he also doesn't control what awards people give him.
Right, it's not like he's out there tooting his own horn. It's just people talking.
Like the Bills do for Josh Allen.
Right.
Not that he does it, but the Bills do for Josh Allen. So, like, it's a solid pick. It's not where I went.
So who do you got for your pick for most valuable player?
All right, so I'm going to say this before I say who it is. Just because I'm picking them for MVP does not mean I like them, does not mean that I condone their actions, does not mean that I support them.
He means in personal life.
yeah, exactly. Right? Like, please do not think that I'm a ride or die for this man. I think it's Tyreek Hill. I have some bias. I think it's time we stop giving it to quarterbacks. It used to be exclusively the quarterbacks. It used to be a running back or quarterback award. Okay? Wide receivers have gone up in prominence. Running backs have gone down. So, as opposed to
and let's face it, we knew Hill was great with KC, but he's changed the total dynamic of the Dolphins offense.
He could quit today. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a Hall of Famer. You could now, I don't believe this, but there are people who are trying to argue that he is the better all-time speed wideout over Randy Moss. I don't believe it. He has some interesting metrics you could argue, though.
Okay, I don't know. I think he might be. I think the only caveat to that is if we're talking about like catches, like one thing that when you look at like OBJ or Calvin Johnson, Randy Moss, like these guys made catches that just are like unspeakable. I've seen Tyreek drop catches that he should have had.
Yeah,
but speed wise, that guy is a burner. He will fly by you in a heartbeat. I
don't think he's faster than Moss, but I'm saying that like the best deep threat of all time. I think it's still Moss. I think it's still Moss because of some of that stuff. But I'm just saying the fact that it wasn't the craziest thing I'd ever heard was eye-popping itself, because he's only 30. And these guys play longer and their nutrition's better. So this is why I think it's him. One, I think that and it's a policy-based argument, and I'm biased, so I try to admit that when I think it matters. I don't think that the league is just about quarterbacks. And since wide receivers are the new running backs, I think it makes some sense to put wide receivers in that discussion. If you want the best, just pure, like, argument I can make for him, other than just watch him play, and then go like, wow, this guy's highlight reel is really long for a dude who's only 30, might be, and then go like, wait, that was just this dude's highlight reel for this year, would be the simple fact that teams Marvin Harrison is a arguably top 5 wide receiver of all time. People were like, I have to stop Marvin Harrison and Peyton Manning. Okay. Randy Moss is Randy Moss. And other than when he played for Brady, people were talked about, oh shit, I got to stop Randy Moss. Well, they didn't mention the quarterback. Tyreek Hill was that guy. Tua is really good. Is he top 5? Maybe. He's definitely in the top 10, but he's not so good that you definitively know where he is. And then, the start of his career was really weird as well. You talk about Tyreek Hill. Teams are happy if they only get 60 yards and a touchdown. That's how good this guy is. And if you look at what he's doing, like, look at that. Like, that's I don't feel good. I don't feel good talking up the man. That was a tough football play. He ran between 2 hitters, 2 tacklers to get extra yards.
He's not real big, so he's like a tiny guy.
He's not real big. I mean, he's ripped and like he's a physical. We're talking about NFL standards, right? Steph Curry is 6'2", and he's yoked if you look at him, but he's a small basketball player. I'm not saying okay. Tyreek Hill is that offense. The way that teams play him lets the 2 speed backs that they have free reign because there can never be a safety. There can never be an extra linebacker. It lets Jalen Waddle eat single coverage all the time. And it's not just Tyreek. His coach is a genius. His coach is using him well. But Tyreek is the guy who can move around, who can run the different routes, who can catch the passes, even though he's not a natural. That was Steve Smith's criticism of him. He's not a natural catcher, hand catcher. He catches with the body. Now, it's working for him. But if you remember when he first came into the league and all we knew was that he was really fast, they used him as a running back and a kick returner too. We didn't know where he was going to play naturally or all the time. He's just so game warping. And I haven't even made, like, here's the stats. Like, it's I didn't have them pulled up on purpose because I don't have them memorized. And I want to have the natural reaction that I do when I look at his stats again. And sweet God. Okay. He has 93 catches for almost 1,500 yards, 1,481 with 12 touchdowns. That's a all-pro season. We have a 25% of the season left.
Yeah.
He's probably going to hit 2,000 yards.
Easily, because that offense is explosive, man.
That offense is explosive. He plays great in the cold weather. He's a playoff performer. Now, that stuff isn't so relevant for the MVP, but it does give him some of the gravitas and like make it not feel kind of like fluky and weird to give it to him. And here's the best argument I can make. He's a wide receiver that's so good. The fact that a wide receiver never gets that award, and I brought his name up, and you didn't go, "What the fuck?" That's how good Tyreek Hill is. He is who it is. Now, if this was the typical season where the quarterbacks are super dominant and there's a clear one, would I make that argument? Probably, because I argued for Calvin Johnson when he broke some of the records and had like 1,900 yards or whatever it was. But everyone said I was crazy then. That argument is aged like wine, I might add. And I think this is the next evolution of it. So I think it's Tyreek Hill. I'm not going to say it's not close. There's no other case. I think it's Tyreek Hill.
Okay, so moving on to Defensive Player of the Year. I know who you have, obviously. Now, that person did come up in my own analysis and research. Now, my pick is not. It's not really a feel good. In fact, I hate the team that I've picked this player from. But
Chris Jones.
No. I think who I think's going to get it is Micah Parsons for the Cowboys.
Yeah. The media's behind him.
He has 42 tackles and 12 sacks on the year. Now, runner-ups to this, of course, is T.J. Watt with 47 tackles, 14 sacks. Myles Garrett with 24 tackles and 13 sacks. But the guy I chose, yes, Anubis is going against the grain from a team in my own fucking division.
Max Crosby?
The Raiders, Max Crosby, who has 66 fucking tackles and 12 sacks on the year on a team that's going fucking nowhere. This guy, if we were talking about, like, if I could say most valuable player for a team that's got nothing to win for or play for, he would be the guy. This guy has a motor. And every other guy I mentioned is great, and they're probably going to win it between the three of them. But I just felt, I looked at Max's numbers, and I'm just like, holy fuck, dude. Sack-wise, he's right there with the rest of them. But the tackles, dude, he is like a tackling machine.
He should get more. And here's the thing with him. And he's a Raiders, and I obviously don't like him because go Pitt. But here's the thing. Everyone that you just named, everyone's going to be like, "Oh, why is it not Myles Garrett?"
Right.
And I'm gonna the media talks too much about a guy who can only do one thing. Okay, he's bad against the run. Everyone who plays in the AFC North is like run on him. Now, running on a pass rusher to try to slow him down and bang him up a little bit isn't anything new. But he's not good against the run. He is a sack artist and only that. Now, is he maybe a better sack artist than most guys? No, it's not a maybe. He is. Is he a better sack artist than some of the dudes that you named? He's not. But this is what Crosby can do. He's great against the run. He's amazing against the run. He's actually the only pass rusher in football, elite level pass rusher, who I actually think is better against the run than TJ Watt. What gives Watt the edge against a lot of guys is he plays against the right tackle. And so the fact that he is so good against the run, going up against the tackle that traditionally is better at run blocking, does a lot for him. But I do think Crosby is, at least this year, a little bit better. Where Myles Garrett falls short of Parsons and Crosby is he not only is he worse against the run than they are, he's I wouldn't say he's bad, but he's very mediocre. And
it's almost like Myles takes like plays off or something. Like he plays for the quarterback stack, but it's like
he's you remember Dwight Freeney, how he played football? He's Dwight Freeney. Now Dwight Freeney should be in the Hall. I don't know if he's definitely got Hall of Fame numbers. And Garrett's going to be a Hall of Famer. But Dwight Freeney was bad, like legitimately bad against the run. Now, part of it was he was just a small pass rusher. It wasn't that he was a coward or anything. I'm not even saying that Jason Garrett or Myles Garrett is a coward. But I am saying he's pretty damn big, too big. He's too damn big to be that damn bad at stopping the run. And Crosby isn't. So I wanted it because right now the two hot names is Parsons and Garrett. Some people are even saying Garrett for MVP, and it kills me.
No,
absolutely not. I have TJ Watt. I obviously have TJ Watt. I think he's the best pure pass rusher in football.
I really like TJ Watt, by the way. I mean, it's like
he's
I only chose Crosby because I thought that, for the team that he's on, but like I would not hate it if Watt got it because Watt has a high motor. He's actually better than JJ in a lot of ways. It's really quite amazing what he does, and it's unfortunate that he doesn't play for the Broncos, but
well, there's some people on the board that hate TJ Watt and think he's not
fuck them. They don't know.
But here's the deal with TJ rather. One of the things that he does, like the pass rush is what it is. Like you just see it. He gets doubled. The Highsmith guy, Alex Highsmith, great pass rusher. Great pass rusher. Absolutely love him. If you go back and you look at the sacks that he had last year, when he got them, they almost all came in the games that Watt played, and he was banged up last year. I mean, that should just tell you a lot. But here's the difference between Watt and even Crosby. I don't know if you know this. Did you know that TJ Watt's actually pretty good in coverage? He drops back and covers tight. Well, you're the only one, brother, and I appreciate that. He drops back in coverage. Is he out there like oh geez, what is that? Milano or Fred Warner? Absolutely not. No, but he covers some people out in the flats. He covers people 5-10 yards back from the line of scrimmage sometimes if he has to.
No, he
does everything.
Prototypical linebacker build to do both. Like that's the thing, and that's what makes him very valuable in there.
He's exactly, and the only guy who pass rusher, run stopper, and coverage that's in the DPOY discussion and should be is Micah Parsons. Here's the issue with Parsons over Watt. Parsons is more talented than Watt. Parsons is more talented than any defensive player. One of the reasons people love Garrett so much is his raw talent, and Micah Parsons is significantly more physically gifted than Myles Garrett. I'm not shitting on Myles Garrett. He's a generational prospect. Sometimes there's better generational fucking prospects. Like, it just is what it is. Micah Parsons is a little inconsistent. He doesn't take plays off. I think he gasses himself. He's better in coverage than TJ is because he's more athletic. I don't think that he's actually better against the run than TJ. I don't know what his tackle totals are. A lot of times for TJ, really what he's great at is he keeps contained and then wraps the guy up. Somebody else comes in, gets the tackle. Micah Parsons, I believe, will retire and have a better career than TJ Watt will. I believe that Micah Parsons will retire as a top 5 defensive player of all time. Micah Parsons hasn't had as good a year as good as TJ when he tied the sack record. We're just going off of this year, not for projections. And to me, here's the deal. If you watch the Steelers play, they cannot win if TJ Watt has anything less than a very good game. They cannot win. Dak and CeeDee Lamb go off. The Browns have rough luck and the running game. None of those guys, other than maybe Crosby, can honestly say that they impact wins and losses as much. Their team is TJ Watt. And so I can with a straight face argue that he's better than all of them. And he's a better pass rusher than all of them. And I can quite literally show you their win rate and things like that with and without TJ Watt. I think it's TJ Watt. Now, if it goes to Crosby, I'm not going to be mad. If it goes to Micah Parsons,
I don't think Crosby's really like Crosby gets brought up, but I think really
he's
when
on
it comes down to
yeah,
he's on the edge, and like I just think no one's going to take it seriously.
The media,
it's either going to be Parsons, Watt, or Garrett. That's really the top three.
The media wants Garrett because they have a hard on for the Browns, and they want to celebrate who they think is the best pure pass rusher because they don't know any better. You know, one of the knocks that TJ gets is he goes up against the right tackle. Well, why does he do that? James Harrison, the coaches saw when he was a rookie, he has moves that he can do on the right side physically, he can't do on the left. Okay. Well, the right tackle is the run blocking guy. Agreed. It is an easier for most teams job. However, they tend to be the bigger, more physical right tackles. They also never, and he's complained about it, rightfully so, they never call holding against him, which is just infuriates me. It makes me so mad. It really does. But the reason why they line up on the left side and the reason why the best pass guy cover or blocker guy goes on the left side because it's the blind side. The stupid movie. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they get to see TJ Watt coming. It balances out. If it goes to Parsons, we'll see how it shakes out. But the media, they are really pushing the Myles Garrett narrative, and it's killing me. And Micah Parsons, it's not that he's undeserving. It's not even that Myles Garrett is undeserving. I mean, he's a jackass, but.
Well, I think if I went with like any of the three outside of Crosby, like I would either pick Parsons or Watt. Like Garrett's great, obviously, but that low tackle thing kind of bothers me. Like,
and you can see he gets run over, man. Like it's like it's one thing to be beaten. It's one thing to get juked and all of that. It's another thing to just be bad at something that you should be good at. And if we're being honest, it's not that he can't do it. He wants to go balls to the wall and pass rushing downs. Yeah. And Jadeveon Clowney, who's not a very reliable narrator, but he talked about when he was on his way out. I think he got suspended for it towards the end of the year last year. He said that the Browns will do specific things to help Myles Garrett get his stats. I'm paraphrasing, but the quotes are out there. So you know, I'm not mad at the Crosby thing. And let's be honest, if Crosby was having that season that he was having on the Cowboys, and Parsons was having that season, but he was a Raider, then we'd be talking about Crosby and not Parsons. So it is what it is. It is what it is.
So head coach of the year, this was always going to be interesting. And I like your pick. I love my pick. So let's talk about your pick.
He's the man down in Florida. And I'm not talking about the infamous Florida man. I'm talking about that man. Look at that man. You know what that man is? He's a genius. You know why he's a genius? Because he does genius things. There's no way to put it. Okay. I don't know how else to say it. You watch his offense and you go, damn, he has some really good players. And you watch the same guys do the same things week after week after week in different ways. And you're like, well, damn, they have a pretty good coach. You know what they're going to do. Raheem Mostert, A-Chain or A-Chan, I don't know how to say the running back's name. No disrespect to him. He's a wonderful player. Those aren't household names at running back. Okay.
Now, a lot of them were cast-offs from the Niners and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, you know what? The cast-offs ain't sinking. Jalen Waddle, wonderful player. I'm not taking anything away from him. Tyreek Hill, my MVP. You look at these guys and you see what they're doing and how quickly that they did it. He got there instantly, made a difference, and they almost won a playoff game against the Bills with their second or third string quarterback last year. It's not relevant for this year, but it kind of like shows you maybe a little bit like of what they're building. Now they have an elite offense. They're scary to play. Yeah, you have questions about them in cold weather and whatnot. But here's the thing. They're going to win the East.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to beat out the Bills. Now, the Bills have injury issues and whatnot, but they're going to beat out the Bills. And you look at the Dolphins.
Did you choose them to win the division?
No, I said I was going to, but Tua's health is what stopped me.
Because I know I chose the Jets, but that was before Mr. Rogers.
I might have picked them to miss the playoffs because I thought that Tua was going to get hurt.
Yeah.
I'd have to go back and check.
I'm just saying, like at this point, like it's kind of cool to see them doing well. It's been a long time for the Dolphins.
The Miami struggles to they have football fans. They struggle to get fans to go to the stadium because there's so much stuff to do. But it is a storied franchise, and the fans that do show up are fantastic. It's great. The NFL is
fantastic.
Great. It's fantastic. And you look at what they do offensively, and everybody, they complain. People complain a little too much about like the rules favor the offense and whatnot. People watch games from the 80s. They'd be like, oh, that shit's whack. These guys are slow and not good, and they just tackle people in the head because they get beat. And I'd be like, you're right. That's a little overstated. You should enjoy it, but you're right. As slanted as it is for the offense now, it was equally slanted, if not more, for the defense back then. Maybe you should have some balanced rules. But we can't do that. It's one or the other. But here's the thing. When you watch the Dolphins play, no one says that shit. They just watch the dope-ass football and enjoy the beautiful offense. And they're going to win that game. They're on the cusp of being a Super Bowl contender. He's not been blessed with a great defensive roster. His side of the ball is doing the hard work. He's a huge part of Tyreek Hill's ascension. It's not all Hill. You got to give most of the credit to Hill, but it's not all Hill. And here's the other thing, too. And this is something that I think maybe I'm not being subjective, and maybe it hit me in the feels. But he's a man who openly talks about he's an alcoholic and how he became an alcoholic in his battles with addiction. And he's not the old school, hardcore, tough head coach. And he's not the unrelatable math whiz that nobody can stand. He's closer to the math whiz type dude. But he's a dude who coaches his players from a place of realism and empathy. He's a dude who embraces the fact that he's younger, that the culture in the NFL has changed. The rules favor him, so it's probably pretty sweet to be an offensive head coach right now. He's a dude that connects with his players. And for too long.
Which is very interesting because I think another guy that just got fired not too long ago from the Raiders, Josh McDaniels, doesn't have that connection.
He told Antonio Pierce to never reference the Raiders losing or the Patriots losing the Super Bowl to the Giants. His own coach who played in that Super Bowl. That's where McDaniels is, and he's fucking awful. Just one of the worst head. He might actually be the worst head coach in football history, and I'm glad it happened to someone shitty like him. But then you have McDaniels, who's actually an offensive genius and doesn't need Tom Brady to carry him. And you look at
and he's actually made Tua a much better quarterback.
He has, because he caters. He looked at Tua and said, "I don't care about what you can't do. I care about what you can do, and let's make something work." Because Tua was a first-round draft pick for a reason, right? not saying he was freaking Dan Marino, but I'm saying he deserved to be taken in the first round, even though they kept sabotaging him, giving him new OCs, giving him new head coaches, and all of that fucking nonsense. And we're openly trying to trade him and get somebody else. It was either Brady or Rodgers, or maybe it was both at one point. McDaniels comes in, and all of a sudden, too, is like, hey, I might get a huge contract, and someone will fucking give it to me. And that's who McDaniels is. He has that connection with his players. He has that leadership. He takes up for his guys at the podium. He's an offensive genius. His teams are doing well. He connects with his players in a way that translates off the field and on the field. And I just look at him, and I'm so much happier to give it to him, alcohol story notwithstanding, if you just want to remove that, than some random coach whose team is overachieved and blah, 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 like we used to do. Like when it used to be that winning coach of the year meant that like in 2 years you're going to be fired because a feel good story was over and you're tough. Let's get 10 wins.
Yeah. Who was it? And a really nice guy, but it was definitely a feel good story. The Colts coach Pagano.
Oh yeah.
He got the cancer or something, and there was
a pretty good coach, but he wasn't the best. Yeah, he wasn't the coach. It should go. Honestly,
he was just basically on borrowed time, but it was a nice story at the time.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you give it to McDaniels, here's the other thing. You can actually argue from X's and O's, he's the best coach in football right now. You can put him up against, again, because it's just this year, you can put him up against Shanahan, you can put him up against Reed. Now, I think those guys are better coaches, obviously. But just the theoretics of football, he's got it made in the shade. He knows what it is. So I love the guy. I like to root for his team, and they don't impact my Steelers. And I think that objectively he has a strong.
At least right now, the playoffs, if you have to play him.
The playoffs, and I'm going to be screaming, kill him, walk. Like it's going to be a different dude that you see.
Well, my pick wasn't one I was looking for, but I kind of just realized it within the last few weeks. And Neko's a big fan of him. You can appreciate him, huh?
From Detroit.
You got it, Mr. Dan Campbell. You and I, when we did the draft, I remember this clearly. We saw who they were drafting and said to ourselves, okay, they're picking some players, but they're not going to make any immediate impacts. We don't expect Detroit to do much. In fact, you took Green Bay to win the division. I took Chicago.
I took Green Bay to get the wild card. I took Detroit.
Okay, so, but we weren't not even looking at Detroit at all. And like the way Detroit has played this year, like it's just insane. Like I cannot believe it. Like they lost a game against Green Bay they probably shouldn't have on Thanksgiving, which is usually their day. But still, they're playing at a high level. They have confidence. Goff looks like a totally different guy out there nowadays compared to his days in LA. And, as much as I like McDaniel for the Dolphins, like I think the expectations were there a lot more than they were in Detroit. People weren't expecting Detroit to be 8-3 at this point. So like that's my pick because I think it's just something that came out of nowhere.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. Now this comes back though to what you just said that in the long run, I think McDaniel is going to be in Miami for quite a time. I don't know if this is the end of the road for Campbell. Like I don't know if this is going to continue after this year. It could be just a one and done type thing.
Is this going to be his best year? And I think for Campbell, what suits him is that his players played hard for them, even when he was horrible. And to your point, the only people who were picking Detroit, other than Detroit fans, were people who really, the analytics guys really liked Detroit this year. They really, coming into the season, they really liked Detroit. They also liked Seattle. Seattle had the two tough corners, a good offensive line, and the running game. And Seattle's still fighting for their, fighting to get into the playoffs. It'll be interesting to see how they do. But outside of the analytics guys, Detroit was looked at as like, yeah, you know what? I think they'll be a little bit better. They'll make the wild card. There wasn't that long ago that they were playing for the number one seed. Now they're somewhere between a wild card team and an elite like number one seed. But here's the thing with Campbell. He's a defensive guy. But Jared Goff's career has been resurrected there. Mm-hmm. He's a defensive guy.
I thought he was going there to die.
he might have too. Hey, here's the thing. The only thing that he had going for him over there was they have lower taxes in Michigan than they do California. He was like, fuck it, I got paid. That was
right.
look, most defensive coaches, their offense, even if their offense has talent, doesn't produce like that. So Campbell is obviously, as a defensive dude, I'm not saying that he's going to make their offense better, but he's not getting in the way of it. He's not whining that, oh, why are we taking Amon Ross, St. Brown, and all these offensive guys? Now, granted, they did take a middle linebacker in the first round, and they did trade DeAndre Swift so they could go get Gibbs when Behan was out there. That shit was weird, and I still don't really like either mood, but I'm not going to move. But I'm also, one, he's not the GM, and two, his record's a record. No, he's a great pick. There's a lot of really good guys that you could pick. And here's the thing. Let's say Cincinnati makes the playoffs. All of a sudden, their coach has to get consideration. Let's say the Colts make the playoffs. Now their guy has to get some consideration. There's a lot of guys that it could go to. And honestly, I wouldn't hate it. Here's my runner-up was Andy.
Oh, hell, Sean Payton, if we can find a way.
Oh,
dude. The way that we started the season.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of guys that could go to. So, quite frankly, I like the pick a lot. It's a good pick. It's a really good pick.
Now, the next two topics, I don't think you actually gave me names, but that's okay. We can talk about stuff. The first one is Offensive Player of the Year.
Probably didn't.
But I for me, I chose another helper to Mr. Purdy would be Mr. Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, I think that he's such a valuable piece to that team. And once he got traded from Carolina, it really changed the way that team operates. And that's why you don't see guys like Mostert in San Fran anymore, because there's just no need to have the three-headed monster when you got this little guy running around. So as long as he stays healthy, that's always been one of the issues with Christian.
Yeah, don't I know it. I would probably, to be honest, brother, I'd probably say CD Lamb.
He was somebody I was considering. I thought he's having an amazing year, really coming out. Like, it's really funny because for a long time, I thought maybe Amari Cooper might be the dude there, but they traded him away, and CD came along and just really shined, and
he's
kind of overtook.
Right? Yeah. No, exactly. And now he's doing it. There's no dominant run game. Actually, Tony Pollard is one of the guys I was really high on. He's been a little disappointing, and McCarthy's infamous for run the ball. Why is it always the Niners destroying my Steelers? Why do you always? I've noticed that's the second time. That's a fucking. You know what? Okay.
Well, that's okay, because when I was playing the Tyreek feed, it was when they were giving the 70 points on Denver. So.
Well, you know what? I still don't like it, and your poop face. He's amazing. I think the reason why I give it to CD over him is McCaffrey is a better back than CD Lamb is wide receiver. I would say that. CD Lamb has been good up to this point. He's not been consistently great. This year he has been dynamic. He is, contrary to what some people think on the message board, the fact that you could have a guy who takes a lot of snaps in the slot if you need him to is a strength. And, the stats are just very, the stats are what they are.
I think, and maybe you can verify this, Simple Jack, I think, did not like McCaffrey. Is that, do you remember it the same way I did? I don't think you did.
Jaded does not dispute his talent. He does think he's a little bit of a system back, which I think was just a troll. But he did not like taking him early in the draft for roster construction. That was something I agreed on. But I think the real thing that he dislikes, if I had to guess, is that McCaffrey is tied to the zone blocking system that he absolutely positively hates. So that's why he calls him a system back. And he's just tied to some of the Denver coaches that he likes but doesn't love and drive them up a wall. But McCaffrey is undisputedly great. His issue is, one, I don't think a running back should make that much money. I'm going to be blunt with you. And two, I hate to say it. You know how I feel about that, but I hate to say it. Two, the health is what it is, and it's this year.
The game has changed so much for running backs. I mean, there's the days of. I mean, Derrick Henry is like really one of the last kind of like dinosaurs, just like power backs, and he's really worth it. But I still wouldn't pay an enormous amount of money for him. Like that's sort of what the problem is with the Giants and Barkley is that, they're trying to pay him all that money and he's good, but he can't stay on the field that long. And really nowadays it's more by, they're alternating backs like Denver does in every other team. So the days of having one back really carry your team just aren't there.
It's tough. And McCaffrey is one of the few that can do it. And he does it because he's an all-purpose back. Henry does it because he's a dinosaur. Chubb did it because he's so durable and he could block. And he was a solid receiver, not great, but he was solid. And obviously running the ball, he was great at. So basically, it's become a thing where if you're not, but here's the deal: Chubb had an argument for being the best back. McCaffrey has that argument. Henry had that argument. So if you're not like literally like, yo, I'm one of the best of my generation, you're probably not getting 20 touches a game. And that's it's wild, but it is. It's wild, but it is. What's the next category?
So the next one, again, you didn't give me a name. That's okay. You may actually agree with me on this. I really couldn't. I looked through the list of people they mentioned, and I'm like, I just do not see anyone who's better or more fitting for this. And I know I give this guy a hard time, but considering how last year played out, it has to go to Russell Wilson. It just has to. And I know he's still in that game manager mode, but the things that Russ has done in the last 6 or 7 games and this year in general, like just he's been a lot better at things. But I mean, a lot of times people talk about Hamler, and I'm okay with that but that's like a feel good story. That kid almost died on the field. But this is a case where a guy gets traded to the Broncos. We're thinking, we go into that season, we're thinking, oh, we got Peyton Manning 2.0 here, man. We're ready to go. We're going to go win a Super Bowl. And we just stink. Like, we are bad, and it's not just coaching. It's not just, defense was there, but Hackett was horrible. Russ was horrible. And then we're like saying to ourselves, what are we going to do next year? So Peyton comes in. We're like, oh, okay, man, we're saved. Maybe this is it. Start 1-5, and we're like, oh, God, what's going on?
So I pulled up some odds. And here, I'll read you. There's some really interesting names. Hamler is the favorite, but that's getting into the year. Tua is high up on the list because those awful concussions and missing the end of the season. Russ is high up on the list. Lamar is high up on the list. That one makes a lot of sense. Dobbs is on the list because theoretically you can come out of like obscurity. Trent Williams, Trent Watt Jordan. I don't know who that is. Chase Young is an interesting guy because of all the injuries. Here's a name, and it's not the name I'm going to go with right now. But if he does eke his team into the playoffs, I think it has to be him almost certainly, would be Matt Stafford. Because he's coming off the horrible injuries. The spine stuff is really scary. I don't think it can be Hamler because he only played a couple games this year when there was he's like their 5th safety. So I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to be in the NFL. I'm just saying he's not getting that type of playing time.
And he's not usually a focal point, but it reminds me of if the guy who was the linebacker for Pittsburgh that got paralyzed and came back.
Ryan Shazier.
He didn't play anymore, but that's a feel-good story, right? So if Shazier had come back and played, it'd probably be a similar situation. Like, okay, we got, he came back from a really bad injury and was playing again. So Hamler coming back is great, but the reality is he's not a quarterback. He's not running back or receiver or some position that's always constantly being talked about. So
absolutely. I think it's Tua. I think I would, if I had to pick one right now, I'd say Tua. Because we were talking about
Tua would be, especially if Denver doesn't get to the playoffs. But I think if Denver finds a way to get there and Russ still manages to play well, I just have a feeling he's going to get it.
It would be nice to see him. I think the reason I give it to Tua is I thought that he might retire. I really did. And the scenes of him on the ground spasming with his hands, that shit lives in my head rent free. Russ isn't a bad pick. Lamar's a really good pick. There's a lot of really good picks you could give him. I think that when we did our projections at the beginning of the year, I was like, oh, you know what? I think ODB is going to be pretty solid this year, so he might get it. You know, there's a lot of guys you could go to. I'm gonna say
it's pretty wide open, but I thought Russ was a good pick for that.
No, it's a solid pick. You know who should be in it actually up there? I'd say Sutton.
Mm-hmm.
Sutton wouldn't be a bad pick.
Yeah, he's had a good year. Yeah, for sure.
TJ Watt actually, because he was hurt last year, but
yeah, and he's having a great year. So yeah,
I'm picking TJ Watt for everything. Every award.
TJ Watt for president.
TJ, fuck it, why not?
Well, I know in this next category, you and I are in total agreement. Okay. Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Well,
there ain't anybody else going to touch this kid.
No, you can't. Honestly, the only guy who had an interesting argument over him was kind of Tank Dell, but his seas's over.
CJ Stroud, dude, has just been amazing.
He is.
He is.
He is. He's a star. He's a stud.
I mean, I don't remember. I remember talking him up a lot about how I thought Houston would make strides with him because I felt like he was the most NFL ready. I can't remember if I picked Houston to win the division or not. I really don't remember. I did not expect this, though. I think I said that he was going to go through some growing pains, and that really never happened. If he's going through growing pains, I don't see them like he is doing. He's a veteran out there.
Yeah, dude. The only pains he has is that when that is kind of not so hot offensive line gets him banged up.
Yeah.
Look, what impressed me about him is when he played my Steelers, he had some oopsie moments. But he did a great job of selling the drop back and then set up the slow developing screen. He is a baller, and we should really appreciate how awesome he has been this season. And quite frankly, he's made that division, which is a place of the AFC is a factory of sadness. Like Lawrence is hurt, the Jags are good, but Lawrence hasn't been as good as we had hoped for.
That's so tough on them. Have they? I didn't keep up on that. Is he? Because they said it was a strain, right?
Yeah, I don't know if he's playing next week, but he's not out for the year. Like
that's good. That's actually good for them.
Yeah. But Richardson's out. Like, and Richardson was a guy that, like, I know he's not your cup of tea as a quarterback. But one, you are a guy who values talent, and I remember you watched his clips. You're like, yeah, no, that's NFL talent. And two, you like it when the league has good quarterbacks.
Yes,
and because it sucks when you have to watch bad quarterback play. And so for Stroud to basically save this division from just absolute unwatchable football, given the injuries and the weirdness of Jacksonville. I mean, like, look at that. Like, it's an easy throw for NFL, but he hits it so fast, so quickly that it gives him a chance for Collins to do that. Oh, I remember this throw. Not like this. Little touch. It's
right on the money, dude. Like, that's what you want.
Yep. That's something.
But, I just thought about this. It's going to drive a certain someone crazy. I'm even bringing it up, but we talked about comeback players, right? So we know Richardson kind of been banged up, but Pornstar Minshew, man, like, could he maybe get comeback player? Like, there are people that are really excited for this guy. I don't know what it is, but that dude is somehow paid off the league to get all these pundits and everybody to talk him up.
He's a good backup, weak starter. He doesn't play scared. He's a big personality. He's got we'll just say the aesthetics that are interesting. He's got the wild personality. He's this generation. He's like a more feral Ryan Fitzpatrick, and that's why people. Yeah,
Fitz magic.
You
see that commercial?
I hate it. Every year, somebody. Him and Nick Foles, every year, someone's like, I think that they're. It's like, no, man, shut the fuck up, man. Come on. Shut the fuck up.
So, to our last category is Defensive Rookie of the Year. I'm going to let you start.
Sorry. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Joey Porter Jr. Is top 10 cornerback in the league just this season. I'm just talking about this season, not overall.
Are you going to be serious now?
Yeah, I'm very serious.
So it's not Jalen Carter like what you sent me and told me it was going to be your pick. It's not.
I kind of no. It's Jalen Carter. I wanted to see if he'd let me off. I wanted to be a homer. I can't.
You can't
Jalen
pick
Carter.
Steeler players all the time, man. You
I
can't.
usually don't. I usually get blasted.
I say that with my pick, you're going to be like, you asshole. That's what you're going to do. Watch.
Oh yeah. No, I usually get blasted for being a womer and not a homer. No, Jalen Carter. He's not much of a pass rusher. That's not why he's there. He's there to do that. He makes it almost impossible to run up the gut. And I take that back. I got him confused with the guy they took last year. He is an incredible pass rusher. Look, Jalen Carter was a guy who did some stupid stuff in college, and I worry about what he's going to be like when he gets paid. Because now he's going to play really hard to make sure that he gets paid because he fell down the draft. He apparently didn't interview well, but he was probably the best player coming out of that draft class. He's electric. If you look at him play, the man is just out there. He's just disruptive. He gives you a pass rush up the gut as well. He's the heir apparent to guys like Fletcher Cox and whatnot for that vaunted Philly defensive line. He's going to be a great player for a long time to come, so long as he doesn't go ape shit. Is this a play that I remember? Hold on. Okay. Yeah, so that's him beating double coverage, breaking up the play.
Steamrolled it.
Just doing Aaron Donald type things. That's him.
Clogging up that hole, man. Clogging up that hole.
Not letting you convert. I mean, here's the deal. I'm not saying he doesn't work hard. I'm not saying that he's not a hard worker, all that stuff. But some people they're just born with the warrior gene. Like he's just genetically a monster. It's like he's like what would happen if Bo Jackson played defensive line. I thought that there were talks that the Steelers are going to trade up for him, and I didn't hate it. So yeah, that's the pick, and I think it's a solid one. So which Bronco did you pick?
So on my end, didn't know a lot about this guy. I think you talked a little bit about him in the draft. But after last week, I know exactly who he is, and that's Will Anderson Jr. And dude, he is the one big reason why we sucked ass in Houston, because he is a disruptive player. I didn't know much about him coming out of college. I know he was at Bama.
Oh God, did they have him lining up against your right tackle?
Yeah, dude. He's just ugly. It's ugly. And I didn't get any other footage of him throughout the year, but this was against us, and like he had a slow start.
He's only got 5 sacks, so I'm glad that he got like 2 or 3 against you. That's cool, right? He's super. I mean that sarcastically. His burst is explosive. He didn't play as well as he should have in college his last year.
He must have been salivating at the thought of going against our line. Like it's so ridiculous.
But here's the deal: like we were talking about in the last episode, your line's actually rated above average by almost every single metric.
Well, there are things that we get short-ended on. Like we are better than what people say, but at the same time, man, like
this is not Garrett Bowles from 2 years ago, right? He's physically worn down. McGlinchey has never been a great pass pro guy. He's a run blocker. He's an extraordinary run blocker. No, your line is overall solid, if not spectacular, but you don't have a way to stop special. You don't have a Trent Williams. You don't have you know what? It's just kind of like, you know what? Do you just double him? I don't know. That throw just bothers me.
Yeah. Well, it's like I think that's the thing too. Like with Russell, is that if you really want to disrupt our offense, you just gotta like pressure Russ to the point that he panics, and he will panic. That's the problem, and that's just going back to Russ. Is like by the end of the year, like I'm terrified that we're gonna get stuck paying him because we won't have anybody else. Like we'll be too low in the draft. We won't be able to get who we want. So we're going to have to make the choice. Well, we're going to suck it up, pay him the money, and go with Russ some more, who is decent. But for the amount of money, you and I have talked about it, he's not worth that contract.
He's not worth that money. The capital stuff should be over, I think, after this draft class.
Now, this game isn't necessarily his fault. Totally his fault.
No,
but
it's not. I mean, he had some part of it's on him. Here's the thing with Will Anderson, and I'm watching this now. He is lined up almost exclusively against your right tackle.
Yeah.
So that means that he sucks because that's what TJ Watt does. Also, last week, Nick Bosa was lined up half the time against the right tackle that he was going against. So that means he sucks. Now I'm just seeing more and more pass rushers move around. This is what I will say for Anderson Jr. They gave up a lot to get him because like they made a big splash. They said, we got a quarterback. We got the guy who gets the quarterback. I liked him a lot coming out of college. And there was a point where I thought he was going to be the number 1 overall pick at the start of last college season. It didn't play out that way. And I don't know if it would have, given how good the quarterbacks were. Shout out to my poor man in Carolina, just dying, just suffering. They fired Frank Reich. I don't know if you saw that. 11 games in.
No, did they?
11
really?
games in. 11 games in, they fired Carolina's head coach. So that already tells me the quarterback's cooked. 11 games in, he has a new head coach, and the owner talked about how he wants to hire a coach that will give him a eulogy when he dies because he values loyalty. And his head coach can't get out of the first year. Yeah, my guy is cooked. My guy is cooked. Luckily, there's only one Carolina. But when you're a stud, like my guy in Carolina, if you're a stud, like my guys in Houston, sometimes you end up on those bad teams. And sometimes those bad teams turn around. So Will Anderson, right now, I think is going to end the year, get a little hot. You get that extra game, might hit double-digit sacks. That's a nice way to end a rookie campaign.
Yeah. So, that's all we have. This was a good show, man. Really covered a lot. And
we did our research on this one.
I spent some time like, well, we're going to go over all the players and stuff. I got to go out and find some footage, and I did, which is good.
You found beautiful, beautiful footage. Good arguments. We both worked real hard on that college football segment and all of our facts. And
it was good because I think that we both came at it from a different perspective, and even though we agree on a lot of it, there's stuff that we probably would have done a little bit differently. But as I said before off the air, like next year it's going to be a moot point because they're moving more playoff teams, and that's going to solve a lot of the headaches.
I can tell you this already. I am so uninterested in people going, my team was ranked 10th, and I think we should have been ranked 8th. I don't care. Like, it might suck, like, if that puts you against a bad matchup or something, and I'll be sympathetic, but I don't care. If you're the 13th best team, if you're the 13th or 14th seed and you're just out, I will only care if you truly got screwed. And
if you're a 12 seed and you're crying about playing number 1, I'm like, dude, just be happy you're there. Because back in the day, you didn't have a not chance out.
You know what? Yeah, be happy that you're not playing in the Liberty Tire Bowl buffet. Or like some of these bowl games are ridiculous. Like pretty soon with how marijuana is being legalized, like we're gonna have the Blunt Bowl or something. The Icky Sticky Shuffle Bowl game or something. We'll host it in California. It's just the bowl games are a little bit silly. Like I was born in '87, so I do remember when people were like the Orange Bowl, the Rose Bowl, and now now it's like
because I think you had like 4 major bowls, like the Fiesta, the Orange, and all that. But now it's like it's all about the playoffs. So really, when bowls come around, like I often forget, and I'm like, oh, it was a bowl game.
It's a nice day. I've softened on that because I used to be like, who cares? Now it's still a nice day to drink some beer, have some whiskey, watch some football.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it for me is just remembered they're on because they start like about December 15th or something like that.
And now that I care more about the draft, I they're a lot more. The more if you're a draft Nick, then those bowl games are pretty dope.
So what do you got coming up? Anything at all you're doing?
I'm running a handful of games each week. Still working on the same writing project. As it turns out, y'all, writing a full-length novel is hard. Especially when you're your own editor and graphic designer and all that. So here's what I would say for what I'm up to. Life is really good. I haven't been this happy decades. I'm only 36, so that like 2 decades is a substantial part of my life.
Damn, you're old, man.
I fucking know, dude. Don't I know it? And
I'm a spry 21.
Man, you are shitty at math or a bold-faced liar. Like I can't. What are you up to, man?
I'm 53 age-wise.
Oh, God.
As far as like content, I think tomorrow I decided I'm gonna do kaiju discussion. I was trying to wait for Kevin Lambert of the Entertainment Headquarters to do a lot of this discussion, but he, unfortunately, being in the UK, he's not gonna be able to view -1 until the 17th. So I got some shit I need to talk and get off my chest about. Godzilla -1, the GXK second trailer for the new movie with Godzilla versus Kong coming out, and then Monarch on Apple TV. Like that series so far is amazing.
Man, how much is Apple TV a month?
It's like $6, but I'm only paying for it for the time that I'm watching this series because it's the only place I can watch it.
I might do that. Like I love Godzilla. You know, we've talked on the show a little bit and off screen a lot about like my relationship with my dad and the complexities that they're in. But one of the greatest gifts that he ever gave me, other than appreciation for sports and the worldview, we won't get into that. You know, we've hinted at it and stuff like that, is for a guy who was a brilliant professor, published in 3 different languages. He loved some really kind of what many people would call silly stuff, whether it was sports or the Godzilla movies or Westerns. And I love the shit out of some Godzilla. I just love it. I've not seen the new Godzilla movie, but they're talking about how it's not just a great kaiju movie, it's a great movie in general. And
have you seen it yet?
No, man, I want to.
Oh, dude, it's so great. And that's the thing. Like, you take Godzilla out of it, it's still an amazing film. Like, it's very character driven. It's so good.
It was, without getting super political, because I don't know it. Do you buy into and I've not seen this too much on the internet, but I've seen some. We in the woke critique, we riding with that. Okay. I didn't think so.
No, dude. And in fact, I praise it for that. Like, look, man, I mean, that period of what happened with Japan and like I'm not a sympathizer in a way that like most people are when it comes to that. Like, I'm happy we helped them rebuild.
Yeah.
But I was never happy about Pearl Harbor. And the thing that I get, Tor is like one of my favorite movies ever. And I love that they portrayed the captain like in a way that he said, this was a bad fucking move on our part. No matter how it played out, we fucked up and we're going to pay the price. So that's why he makes that like we awoke a dragon or something like that effect. Yeah. So doing what we did was nasty as fuck. We killed a lot of innocent people
and changed lives after that for generations.
Right. But we also went back and helped rebuild that place, and we took upon ourselves to fix that error. War is an ugly thing, dude. It always has been. It's always will be. But this movie addresses a lot more of the personal standpoint. They don't spend time condemning the U.S. In fact, I'll only say this. There's a portion where the U.S. actually detects Godzilla first. And they warn Japan, like, you need to prepare for this creature, because when we were doing our testing on the atoll, we did something. And so they warn Japan, but what happens is we can't assist Japan because we're worried, or Japan's worried, and the U.S. is worried about irritating the Soviets. We can't irritate the Soviets during this, so we have to stay out of it. So that's why Japan ends up like dealing with themselves, and it's really the citizens that take the initiative to stop Godzilla. It's not the government. So you're going to find the story very interesting. I don't know people who are talking about woke or anything else. Like, maybe they got something out of it differently than I did, but nothing in it.
I think that it's easy to throw that word around for clout and use it, apply it to if you talk about anything that's geopolitical at all, right? I think that's what it is. Like, typically, if something was that, and I'm not saying that being woke is good or bad or what constitutes it or whatever. What I'm saying is generally, if that label, if there's something to it to any degree, it's everywhere. But I did see some some comments here. They're like, "Oh, I thought it was okay, but it was a little woke for me," or like, "I'm not going to watch this woke trash." Okay, all right. No, I figured. Well, my Steelers are playing, and somehow we have given up a touchdown early to the Patriots. So I'm going to want to jump off the fucking bridge. That's great.
Well, one thing to remember is when you're watching Poetic Carnage with Mr. Poet and I, this is the one thing you have to keep in mind because this is what makes us work.
Besides, there's no reason we can't be civil.
So just remember that, folks. You could have disagreements, but we can be civil about it.
Yeah, because if you're not, then what happens is you have fake outrage, and then you end up hating each other like Skip and Shannon.
Yeah, because like then you just got fucking Poet doing this.
I haven't got time for this Mickey Mouse bullshit.
No one when I say Mickey Mouse bullshit, you don't want to be around me. You wouldn't like me when I'm Mickey Mouse bullshitting around. Yeah. Oh, sweet God.
Well, thank you for joining me, sir. I'm going to probably log off here, check out the game a little bit. Maybe harass you a little bit about if you lose. So, you know.
It's not looking great. It's Trubisky just threw a pick in real time.
Oh, great. Wonderful.
There's a flag. Let's hope that it's I might be drunk. So later, everybody, and pray for me. Save me, Tom Brady. Save me.
Thank you, everybody. If you enjoyed the content, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you would. Support this man. He does gaming, Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. So please go check out his stuff.
Check out my stuff, or I'll date your mother gently. I will gently date her, but I will date her.
You do not want that, especially if he's a pissed off Steeler fan.
I am a horrible father, and you will suffer my consternation.
See y'all later. Have a great night, and thank you very much for watching.
Thanks.